The red-haired woman runs Ertile.
A blue-eyed man watches unhappily. She recognizes the man's piercing gaze. A childhood memory resurfaces painfully. Aubrey recalls his gaze years ago on a slave island. She desperately tries to outrun him.
Aubrey fears he still remembers her.
The blue-eyed man catches her and warns her not to fall while running.
She hopes his kindness means he does not recognize her.
He leans in and admits her beauty made her almost unrecognizable.
He holds her hand and praises her radiance.
He leans close for a quiet whisper.
A sudden, sharp dun sounds as he identifies her as the lady from the slave island. Aubrey begins recounting her life since her mother's death. As a fly buzzes with a quick buzz, 6-year-old Aubrey sits by her mother's body. She wiggles her toes in uncertainty, wondering what to do next. A blonde man approaches young Aubrey and asks if she remembers him.
He claims her mother arranged a new home for her and tells her to follow him.
Aubrey wonders if her mother truly found her a place to go. She stands and takes his hand as he calls her a good girl.
Aubrey gazes at the world in awe.
She sees the beautiful island and asks if this is her mother's intended destination.
The blonde man nervously lies, confirming the beauty of the place.
He points toward a field filled with other children. He orders her to follow a new, stern man to live on the island.
A sack of coins gives a quick rattle as payment for the girl.
The blonde man bids Aubrey a cold farewell. Aubrey realizes she is being abandoned as the new man grabs her hand. The stern man demands she come with him. She senses something is wrong as they reach a barn.
Muffled sobs and sniffles echo from within the dark building.
Aubrey stares in wide-eyed horror. A sharp slap sounds as she begs not to be hurt and asks to go home. She realizes she is tracked too late. She mourns the decision to follow the blonde man.
A sizzling hiss sounds as a glowing red slave mark is branded onto her skin.
The fresh brand on her shoulder aches with heat. Aubrey cries out in pain as the guard watches over her. The man coldly informs her that she is now property. He declares that the slave mark will always follow her. Aubrey makes a desperate dash for freedom. She flees blindly into the distance. Waves swish against the shore as she finds no escape from the endless island. She weeps quietly under the moonlit sky. The dark sea threatens to consume her as her mark continues to burn. A heavy thud sounds as she collapses onto the sand in total despair. Aubrey remembers the encounter that would eventually change her life.
The blue-eyed man holds her hand with an intensity that bridges past and present.
Other children toil in the fields under a harsh sun. A loud smack sounds as a guard cracks a whip, shouting for the children to work faster. The man demands more. A caption identifies the location as Crisis Island. Narration explains children were put to work from a very young age. The children endured their hopeless life in silence without complaint. As crickets give a soft chirr, the children continue to endure. A girl whispers to Aubrey, asking if she heard the rumors. She claims a girl was sold and warns of men coming to kidnap others. Aubrey huddles in fear, tears welling in her eyes. Her friend offers a comforting smile, telling her not to worry. 8 years pass on Crisis Island, marking a shift in time. A woman asks if the island always looked this way, and the guide confirms it. A sudden, sharp rustle sounds as a child guest looks back.
A quick swish sounds from the trees, prompting the girl to report seeing someone.
The man laughs and claims only guests with reservations are allowed on the island. A bird gives a quick flutter as the man tells the guest to follow him. Phoebe gives a quick whoosh and a jolt as she playfully startles Aubrey. Aubrey gasps, telling Phoebe that she was scared by her sudden appearance. Phoebe laughs and apologizes for the prank while stretching her arms. They watch the new arrivals from behind the trees. Phoebe notes that the overseer is distracted and is glad Aubrey was spared the whip. Phoebe insists on sharing terrifying news despite Aubrey's reluctance. Aubrey gives a sudden flinch upon learning that the brothel owner is returning. Phoebe warns that the man is coming in 10 days and suggests they hide. Aubrey clenches her chest, overcome by a deep sense of dread. A quick whoosh sounds as Phoebe hugs Aubrey, promising to stay with her. Phoebe reassures her that they will hide together and everything will be fine. A heavy step sounds as a man watches the girls walk away. The man continues to observe them silently from the shadows. An intense gaze reflects the two girls in the man's eye. A sudden sharp "ah" sounds as an alarm is raised. Someone screams that the brothel owner has arrived and orders everyone to run. A girl cries out in shock that he arrived 10 days early. The man snickers as Phoebe gives a quick flail, mocking their attempts to hide. Aubrey watches in total horror as her friend is captured. Phoebe yells for Aubrey to escape while she can. Aubrey hesitates, looking back at her friend in agony. A quick dash sounds as Aubrey flees while her friend urges her on. A voice yells for her to stop as she runs. Aubrey screams for the man to get away as he reaches for her. Aubrey gives a heavy pant as she runs blindly for her life. A sudden sharp smack sounds as a guard threatens to sell everyone once caught. The forest stands silent under the orange glow of sunset. A quick step sounds as Aubrey runs barefoot through the woods. A sharp trip sounds as Aubrey's foot catches a root. A heavy, dull thud sounds as she collapses onto the ground.
Aubrey lies on the shore, fearing her fate of being sold.
She huddles in the sand, desperate to avoid being caught. Waves give a soft swish as she searches for a way off the island. Aubrey gives a quick flinch as men shout for others to find her. Aubrey crouches in despair, realizing they will never stop searching for her.
Aubrey wonders how much longer she can keep running and contemplates death.
A single teardrop falls in despair.
A man is called Young Master as he stands amidst flowers.
He looks back in curious silence. The blue-eyed man turns toward her. Aubrey thinks that he is not a local and might be her only hope. As men search for him, Aubrey notes that he has a home to return to. His boots crunch on the ground as a quick step sounds. Aubrey dashes toward him to beg for help. She suddenly collides with him, looking up in shock. Aubrey grabs his arm, a quick shake sounding as she begs for his help. She continues her desperate plea, begging him to save her.
Aubrey looks up with wide eyes and asks him to take her away.
The blue-eyed man remains silent, staring back at her with an unreadable expression. Aubrey wonders why he is simply staring at her without responding. Searchers shout nearby and a quick thump sounds as Aubrey panics about her capture. A quick grab sounds as the blue-eyed man takes her hand and leads her away. She follows him toward the shore, mesmerized by his sudden intervention. Aubrey gazes at him, confused by his willingness to help a stranger. They reach the docks, where Aubrey sees a large ship waiting. Amidst the crew's shouts about being late, he orders her to hide in the sack. Aubrey quickly crawls into the bag, her movement creating a soft wriggle. A quick grab sounds as a man places a hand on the blue-eyed man's shoulder. A light brown-haired man demands to know where the young master has gone.
He looks at him with suspicion, wondering what he's been doing.
The man asks if he has been busy hauling cargo this entire time. He scolds the blue-eyed man for wasting time on such menial labor. The crew announces they are ready to set sail immediately. Aubrey huddles inside the sack, a quick thump sounding as she feels the ship move. Relief washes over her as she realizes she is finally leaving the island. She vows never to return, hoping for a future without pain. A hand reaches out and rests gently on her shoulder.
Aubrey remembers Phoebe's kind smile and the plans they made.
She recalls Phoebe's idea for their future as a quick drip sounds from her tears. Tucked away on the ship, Aubrey whispers a tearful apology to her friend. The ship arrives at a bustling harbor filled with other vessels. Aubrey gives a sudden, sharp flinch as she hears footsteps, planning to sneak off without being caught.
A heavy boot comes down with a quick step on the wooden deck.
A quick reach sounds as a man's hand moves to grab the sack. The blue-eyed man steps in and offers to help carry the bag. A worker warns him about a man named Hardy, but agrees to let him help. The man groans in agreement and lets the young master take the bag. A quick whisper sounds as the blue-eyed man addresses Aubrey through the sack. He carries her off the ship, holding the bag like a precious treasure. Bystanders murmur, confused by the sight of a noble carrying cargo himself. He walks through the town with Aubrey held firmly in his arms. Turning into a quiet alleyway, he tells Aubrey that she is now safe. The blue-eyed man begins to untie the red cord holding the bag closed. A quick gasp sounds as Aubrey emerges, her face flushed with relief. She tries to thank him, but he abruptly tells her to go her own way.
Aubrey worries the boy might be in trouble because she latched onto him.
Aubrey observes the dark-haired boy more closely. She thinks he is the most beautiful boy she has ever seen. The noble boy stands silently amidst falling flower petals. He asks if she heard him and mentions her desire to escape. A quick grab sounds as he warns she could get caught again. A quick gasp sounds as Aubrey flinches, terrified of being captured.
A quick dash sounds as she turns and runs.
She runs barefoot through the cobblestone streets. Aubrey flees blindly into a quiet alleyway. The blue-eyed boy watches her departure with a serious expression. He tells her to live freely and never get caught. He acknowledges they likely will never meet again. A massive, grand mansion stands under a bright blue sky. A quick click sounds as a hand opens a locket. Diane looks at the portrait and speaks of her sister, Aubrey. She tells her sister to wait just a little longer. Diane gazes at the scattered letters across her desk. Diane looks determined, yet sad as she waits. A flower girl smiles while walking through the city streets. Crates of fresh vegetables sit in the marketplace. Aubrey notes how much the world has changed since she left. A soft growl sounds from her stomach as she wonders where they go. A man stops and calls out to the Luagral. He asks if she is okay, noting her feet are bleeding. He invites her over to check her bad injury. The man reaches a hand out toward the girl. A sudden flinch sounds as Aubrey pulls away in hair. She runs away from him, desperate to remain hidden. Aubrey tells herself she must find a safe place. She is terrified of being sold into slavery again.
Aubrey feels the city would never welcome a runaway slave.
A heavy pant sounds as she runs toward the mountains.
Aubrey realizes she has reached her limit after 2 days.
A heavy stagger sounds as her hunger and sore feet overcome her.
A soft murmur sounds as she whispers for Phoebe. In a dream, Phoebe asks if she is happy running alone. Her friend tells her she shouldn't have awakened her. Aubrey remains collapsed on the cold mound.
A soft drip sounds as Aubrey cries in her sleep.
She apologizes for leaving Phoebe behind to escape alum.
A man tells his dog to slow down in the woods.
He asks the wagging dog if it found something.
The dog finds Aubrey unconscious in the forest.
A quick dash sounds as the man tries to wake her.
A loud shout for the madam echoes at the mansion.
A maid informs Diane that Bardem found a child.
She mentions the child has red hair like the one Diane seeks.
Diane stands up quickly and asks where she is.
Diane orders the child to be brought to her immediately.
Aubrey slowly blinks her eyes as she begins to wake. A quick whoosh sounds as a brown-haired woman leans over to check on the girl. Aubrey gives a sharp gasp and screams in terror upon seeing the stranger.
The brown-haired woman recoils in surprise at the girl's sudden outburst.
A sudden flinch sounds as Aubrey stares at her with wide, fearful eyes. Aubrey weakly asks for her mother, and the woman smiles warmly at the recognition. A soft hug sounds as the woman embraces her, identifying her as Aubrey Sandalwood.
Aubrey is deeply confused, noting the resemblance, but remembering her mother is dead.
The woman is moved to tears, remarking on how much the girl looks like her mother. She mentions she always expected Aubrey to grow into such a strong resemblance.
The woman asks her maid if the girl isn't a mirror image of Diane, leaving Aubrey bewildered.
She assumes Aubrey was simply too young to remember the family connection.
The brown-haired woman looks at her with a gentle, hopeful expression.
Surrounded by a floral aura, she prepares to explain her identity. The woman reveals that Aubrey's mother, Diane Hervaldi, was her own older sister. She insists that Aubrey see a doctor immediately, and a man in a suit gives a polite bow. The doctor examines Aubrey, noting severe dehydration and warning her about her injured feet.
A quick glance sounds as the doctor looks at the girl with a bead of sweat.
A sudden flinch sounds as Aubrey worries the doctor noticed the slave mark on her back.
The doctor continues his instructions with a serious and professional demeanor. A soft nod sounds as Aubrey agrees to inform him of any further pain. The woman calls out to Aubrey to get her attention. She explains that a stable keeper found her collapsed and holds her hand gently. They sit together in the lavish room as the woman offers comfort.
A heavy thump sounds from Aubrey's heart as she is asked why she was in the woods. Aubrey recalls the trauma of being a slave and the hopelessness of her past.
She remains silent, sweating in fear that no one would ever truly take her in. A sudden loud slam sounds as the heavy doors to the room are thrown open. A heavy step sounds as someone enters the room with authority.
A tall, blonde man with a stern expression stands in the doorway.
He demands to know where the girl is as he looks around. The man stares into the room with an intense and intimidating gaze.
A quick dash sounds as Aubrey recoils, finding the man's presence absolutely terrifying.
The brown-haired woman comforts the girl and tells her it is okay to keep resting.
She greets the man as her husband and confirms the girl is Diane's daughter.
She presents the red-haired girl as proof of the family resemblance to Diane. The blonde man remains skeptical, questioning how they can be certain of her identity.
The woman explains that they look like twins and that Aubrey recognized her immediately.
She gestures toward Aubrey's face, insisting the proof is undeniable.
A sharp turn sounds as the man dismisses the idea, claiming he sees no resemblance.
He sternly forbids her from bringing a dirty child into their household.
The man exits, leaving the woman standing alone in the center of the grand hall.
A quick clench sounds as the woman grips her dress in frustration. She turns back to Aubrey with a forced smile, telling her not to worry about him.
A soft sit sounds as Aubrey worries she has caused trouble for her new aunt. The woman sits beside her and asks Aubrey to share what has happened to her. Aubrey recounts how her mother died of a plague in Finsweed when she was 6. The woman is struck with grief upon hearing the news of her sister's death.
She asks how Aubrey survived alone, while Aubrey fears revealing her past as a slave.
A quick glance sounds as Aubrey wonders if her family would still accept her. Aubrey flinches as she remembers Count Jeffrick's harsh demand to never bring a dirty child into his house, but she desperately hopes she is finally somewhere safe. Her thoughts are consumed by the terrifying possibility that she might get kicked out of the mansion.
She fears that if her aunt ever discovers her past as a slave, the woman's warm gaze will instantly turn into contempt.
Aubrey concocts a lie, claiming she merely roamed the streets as an orphan and ran errands for adults to scrape together meals for survival.
She continues her fabrication, claiming she got lost in the woods after being separated from other children, anxiously wondering if her lie is convincing enough.
A bead of sweat rolls down Aubrey's face as she looks up at her grieving aunt in the lavish hall.
A soft drip sounds as Aunt Barbara weeps with joy, telling the girl she had been searching everywhere for her.
Barbara sobs into her hands, wondering how such tragedy could have happened after being told her sister would be all right, while Aubrey tries to offer comfort. A soft hug sounds as Barbara pulls Aubrey into a tight embrace, promising her that she no longer has to worry about anything.
Barbara instructs the elderly maid Henna to show Aubrey to her room.
Aubrey is stunned by the mention of a room, but Barbara warmly confirms that she will indeed be staying in the mansion. Aubrey feels a wave of uncertainty, remembering that Count Jeffrick seemed to despise her presence despite her aunt's kindness. Barbara tells her not to worry about her uncle and to get some rest, promising that she will handle the rest of the situation. Henna politely requests that Aubrey follow her to the guest quarters. A quick glance sounds as Aubrey follows the maid through the grand, sun-drenched corridor of the massive estate. Henna warns her to keep up to avoid getting lost in the large mansion, prompting a quick apology from the overwhelmed girl. Henna advises Aubrey to behave and ensure she does not upset the other young lady currently living in the mansion. Aubrey ponders the identity of this other girl living in the house. She imagines that anyone living in such a fancy mansion must be incredibly elegant and refined. Aubrey worries the other girl won't be happy to share her home with someone like her, and vows to be extremely careful.
Henna announces that they have arrived at their destination.
Aubrey and Henna stand before a set of massive, ornate double doors. Aubrey is awestruck by the sheer size of the room, wondering if it is truly meant for her. Aubrey exclaims in amazement as she takes in the sight of the lavishly decorated bedroom. A quick flinch sounds as Aubrey reacts with confusion to the maid's sudden instructions. A quick grab sounds as Henna takes Aubrey's arm, telling her she must remove her clothes to be bathed. Terror grips Aubrey as she fears that if the maid sees the slave mark on her back, she will be kicked out immediately. Aubrey desperately insists she can wash herself and begs Henna to let her do it alone. A soft sigh sounds as the maid yields to Aubrey's desperate, wide-eyed plea. Aubrey huddles under a towel after her bath, still feeling tense and anxious. A quick whisper sounds as a young, freckled maid startles Aubrey, who gives a sharp gasp of terror. A soft blush sounds as Aubrey clutches the cloth to her chest, surprised by the newcomer's sudden appearance. The cheerful young maid smiles and offers her assistance with the girl's clothes.
A heavy thump sounds from Aubrey's heart as she panics, wondering if the young maid saw the mark on her back.
The young maid asks if Aubrey washed with cold water, noting that her body feels very cold to the touch. She introduces herself as Trin and tells Aubrey to call her if she needs anything, advising her to use warm water next time to avoid catching a cold. Aubrey asks Trin if she knows where Aunt Barbara is located at the moment. A quick dash sounds as Aubrey rushes off after Trin explains that Barbara is likely in the Count's study. Aubrey realizes she never got a proper chance to thank her aunt and uncle for their hospitality earlier. Not wanting to appear rude, Aubrey stops suddenly when she hears Jeffrick's voice from behind the door questioning Barbara's plan to raise her. Aubrey eavesdrops as Jeffrick asks how they will explain her or Diane's circumstances to the public, while Barbara rebukes him for his cruelty. Count Jeffrick firmly declares that he will not allow Aubrey to stay in the household. A heavy dun sounds as Jeffrick orders his wife to send the girl away the very next day. A sudden clack sounds as a voice calls out to her, and Aubrey flinches in shock at being discovered. A blonde girl in an elegant dress stares down at Aubrey, demanding to know why she is standing there like a little rat. Aubrey nervously asks the intimidating girl who she is. A sudden flinch sounds as Aubrey recalls Henna's warning about the other young lady in the mansion. Aubrey stammers in fear, unable to find the right words to address the hostile girl. She is paralyzed by the thought that overhearing the Count's conversation could get her kicked out instantly. The blonde girl looks at her with narrowed eyes and asks if she is the new maid. The blonde girl stares down at Aubrey, calling her both filthy and clueless. She narrows her eyes, ordering Aubrey to stop hanging around and to get lost. Aubrey realizes that leaving now would mean missing whatever Aunt Barbara has to say next. A soft clench sounds as Aubrey grips her nightgown, feeling that staying won't change her fate. A polite bow sounds as Aubrey retreats, while the blonde girl watches her go with a judgmental glare. A quick dash sounds as the red-haired girl flees down the grand, moonlit corridor of the mansion. A light step sounds as Emily wonders what her parents are discussing that they didn't notice a maid eavesdropping. Surrounded by a floral aura, Aunt Barbara passionately declares her intention to raise the girl. Through the cracked door, the couple's tense shadows loom as they continue their heated argument. Barbara reminds Jeffrick of the tragedy Diane faced and asks how they could possibly send this child away. She mentions how Aubrey's small body was covered in countless scars on every visible inch of her limbs. Emily stands frozen, realizing Aubrey is older yet smaller than her, and reels at her mother's decision. A sharp grit sounds as Emily's expression twists into a silent, bitter scowl of disbelief. Looking at the closed study doors, Emily remains adamant that a dirty commoner has no place in their home. Narrative text recalls how the first few days at the mansion were the best of the girl's life. Aubrey sits in a beautiful dress as maids tend to her, relishing the blissful feeling of being cared for. Aubrey dines on a plate of seasoned drumsticks, though the narrative notes she remained perpetually anxious. Whenever she felt uneasy, she would sit by the tall window and gaze out at the sprawling garden. From her window, she watched the fancy flowers and the many busy people working around the estate.
She would often observe the young lady of the house elegantly enjoying her afternoon tea outdoors.
Aubrey sits curled up on a chair, appearing small and thoughtful within the massive, ornate room.
A soft knock sounds as a voice from the hallway asks if it's all right to enter the room.
Aubrey is startled from her thoughts, turning around with a look of surprise and recognition.
Barbara enters with a warm smile to check on her, while Aubrey expresses her heartfelt gratitude.
Aubrey wonders if today is the right time to ask why her mother's life was so different from her aunt's.
A sudden stop sounds as Aubrey gathers her courage and asks Barbara to tell her about her father.
Aubrey admits she knows nothing about him and is deeply curious to learn what kind of man he was.
A heavy sigh sounds as Barbara's gaze softens, admitting she never wanted to utter that man's name again.
Narration explains that Aubrey's mother, Diane, was originally destined for an arranged marriage within high society.
Diane defied her status by falling in love with a common merchant named Peter Sandalwood.
Despite the family's threats and attempts to stop her, Diane refused to yield and was eventually cast out.
The family expected her to return and beg for forgiveness, but Diane never came back home.
Barbara recalls thinking it was fine as long as her sister was happy elsewhere, but the reality was harsher. While Barbara was pregnant with Emily, a destitute Diane suddenly returned to see her one last time.
Diane stood there in rags, cradling a tiny, frail baby in her scrawny arms.
Diane revealed that an epidemic had killed Peter and left her burdened with an enormous debt. Jeffrick allowed Diane to live in a small annex, and Barbara did everything possible to support her sister.
A tattered brown note rests against a textured background, representing the final message Diane left behind.
Barbara explains that Diane eventually left a note saying she couldn't bear to burden the family any further.
She fears that Diane may have felt pressured by her help, which drove the grieving woman to flee again.
Barbara looks at Aubrey with a gentle smile, marveling at how much the girl has grown since then.
Barbara tells Aubrey that after a long discussion with her husband, she has important news to share.
Aubrey's heart sinks as she anticipates bad news, only for Barbara to announce they will be her guardians.
A quick close sounds as the girl's eyes widen in absolute shock at the unexpected offer.
Aubrey looks completely bewildered, her face turning pale as she tries to process the sudden revelation. She admits she fully expected to be told she was being kicked out of the mansion.
Barbara gently touches her face, reassuring Aubrey that she absolutely belongs here with her family.
Barbara promises to protect her until she finds true happiness, asking if Aubrey will give them that chance.
The two sit together in the quiet room, a moment of profound peace settling between aunt and niece.
A soft hug sounds as Aubrey throws herself into her aunt's arms, finally feeling safe.
The red-haired girl thanks her aunt for her immense kindness.
Barbara proposes holding a celebratory dinner to mark the occasion. Barbara tells Aubrey to get ready and join them soon.
The family gathers around a grand, flower-laden dining table.
Aubrey arrives wearing a beautiful, refined white gown.
Barbara warmly invites her niece to take a seat.
A sharp glare sounds as Barbara stares down her husband.
Jeffrick offers a stiff, awkward welcome to his niece.
Jeffrick expects Aubrey to act with dignity in this house.
A magical mark glows through the back of Aubrey's dress.
Barbara prompts Aubrey to greet her cousin, Emily.
The blonde girl stares at Aubrey with cold, silent judgment.
A soft bow sounds as Aubrey nervously greets her cousin.
Emily acknowledges the greeting with a single, curt word.
The blonde girl smirks while elegantly cutting her debtor. Emily repeats her sharp one-word greeting with a cold gaze.
Barbara rebukes her daughter for her continued rude behavior.
Barbara suggests that Aubrey treat Emily like a younger sister.
A heavy slam sounds as Emily violently rejects the idea.
Barbara firmly corrects her daughter's hostile and entitled outburst. Emily's face flushes red with silent, simmering resentment.
A sudden flinch sounds as Emily speaks with mocking sarcasm.
Emily offers a fake, sugary welcome that masks her malice.
Aubrey vows to live up to her uncle's expectations. Aubrey reflects on the pressure of the family name.
The red-haired girl grips a pair of ornate scissors.
A sharp snip sounds as Aubrey cuts her long hair. Aubrey determines that she truly wants to stay here.
Aubrey looks in the mirror at her short, new style.
Sunlight illuminates the sprawling, meticulously kept estate gardens. A maid informs Aubrey that Lady Emily is calling. Aubrey is surprised to receive an invitation for tea.
A rough shove sounds as Emily earlier pushed amid.
Emily greets Aubrey in the garden with a pleasant smile.
Emily encourages her cousin to speak more casually and freely.
Emily mentions that she has something important to ask.
A cold glance sounds as Emily's expression suddenly shifts.
Aubrey marvels at being invited into such an exclusive space. Emily asks Aubrey about her life before arriving here. Aubrey admits that she spent her life on the streets. Emily asks cruel questions about Aubrey stealing or eating trash. Aubrey is stung by the girl's sharp and malicious interrogation.
Aubrey defends her past, insisting she never stole for food.
Emily asks how it feels to live in luxury now.
Emily questions Aubrey's right to enjoy these expensive things.
A quick grab sounds as Emily tightly seizes a fork.
Emily asks if Aubrey is curious about her true feelings.
A violent stab sounds as the cake is aggressively pierced.
Emily declares she finds Aubrey's presence and appearance disgusting. The blonde girl leaves her cruel, unfinished thought hanging ominously.
Emily masks her internal irritation with a false smile while stabbing her cake.
The screen fades into a swirl of dark, shifting textures as the scene concludes.
Back in the safety of her room, Aubrey's maid, Kryn, asks how her tea with the young lady went.
Aubrey expresses doubt about her place in the mansion, prompting a defensive outburst from the startled maid. The red-haired girl admits she feels like she doesn't fit in, but Trin's enthusiastic response brings her to a sudden halt.
Aubrey worries that she isn't beautiful enough to be worthy of her aunt's family name.
Trin passionately argues that Aubrey is beautiful enough to win the heart of any gentleman. The maid reveals her source is a romantic novel, leaving Aubrey slightly bewildered.
As Trin describes the story of a noble falling for a commoner, Aubrey is caught off guard by the sudden mention of romance.
Aubrey sheepishly admits her illiteracy, so Trin eagerly offers to read the story aloud.
A romanticized vision of a man loving a woman's flaws and pain fills the air as the story begins. Aubrey remains skeptical about the fiction, but Trin insists that real life can be even more romantic.
Trin promises that someone will eventually love everything about her, even her freckles.
Aubrey's thoughts turn inward as she wonders if any man could truly accept the secret mark on her back. A feeling of intense resolve takes hold as she realizes she must find the strength to protect herself.
Aubrey stands with newfound determination, deciding she will become a perfect lady and demanding to see the library.
With a hopeful look, the girl asks Trin to finally teach her how to read. Spring blossoms frame the grand library windows as Aubrey and Trin begin their long journey of study. The seasons shift as Aubrey spends her summer days in the lush gardens alongside the estate staff. Autumn arrives, painting the trees in vibrant shades of red as the leaves begin to fall. Winter blankets the garden in snow while Aubrey diligently practices her writing on a slate. A new spring dawns over the Levant mansion, marking the passage of significant time.
A jovial ha-ha sounds as the old gardener warns a much older Aubrey about her posture while she studies outside.
Now a young woman, Aubrey looks up from her book with a serene and mature expression. Aubrey admits she prefers the heat of the garden because she enjoys the fragrance of the flowers while she writes. The gardener notes that Emily has already debuted and wonders when Aubrey will have her own ball. Aubrey's gaze drifts downward, reflecting the complexity of her current social standing. A voice suddenly calls out from the distance, interrupting the quiet moment in the garden. Trin arrives breathlessly to inform Aubrey that Emily is requesting her presence. Emily sits at her vanity, casually inviting her cousin to enter her private quarters. Aubrey enters with trepidation, noting that Emily hasn't spoken to her since they were children. The blonde lady leans back with a smirk, asking Aubrey's opinion on which jewelry suits her best. Emily mentions an upcoming party at the Duke's estate and demands help choosing her accessories. Surrounded by luxury, Aubrey feels overwhelmed by the opulence of the jewelry she has never seen before. Aubrey frantically waves her hands, denying any desire for the expensive trinkets Emily is showing her. Emily dismisses her denial, claiming Aubrey looks ready to snatch the jewels for herself. The blonde girl holds up a sparkling golden necklace for Aubrey to see. Aubrey points out the item belongs to Emily, who accuses her of staring at it with intense envy. Emily insults the necklace's color, comparing the gemstone to an ugly yellow pumpkin. She holds the rejected jewelry out, offering it to the stunned red-haired girl.
Emily tells Aubrey to consider the necklace a payment for her help in preparing for the party.
Aubrey looks away with a slight, wistful smile, unable to hide a twinge of jealousy over the gala.
A notification confirms that official correspondence has just arrived at the mansion. A formal envelope sits on a table, its heavy red wax seal bearing a distinctive crest. In his study, Count Jeffrick is informed by a servant that an invitation from the Pottingham family has arrived.
Jeffrick reviews the document, surprised by the swiftness of the high-ranking family's response.
The Count's eyes narrow in shock as he reads the unexpected contents of the letter. Sensing a matter of great importance, Jeffrick immediately orders his servant to bring Barbara to him. The elegant invitation explicitly requests the presence of both Emily Levent and Aubrey Sandalwood. Word spreads quickly through high society as noblemen gossip about Aubrey's shocking invitation to the prestigious event. A dark-haired man laughs while wondering if Aubrey is as hideous as the rumors suggest. The man questions the true identity and appearance of Aubrey Sandalwood. The title, Elegant Aubrey, is displayed amidst sparkling butterflies. Aubrey is shocked and blushing as she learns about a party invitation. The girl nervously clasps her hands together.
Barbara confirms that the Pottingham family has invited Aubrey to their evening gala.
Aubrey reflects on how much Emily was looking forward to this specific event.
Barbara explains that she is glad Aubrey can go since many are curious about her.
A soft stammer sounds as Aubrey doubts she was actually meant to be invited.
A loud shout sounds as Count Jeffrick questions the validity of Aubrey's invitation.
A heavy pant sounds from Jeffrick as Barbara notes that rumors have made Aubrey famous.
Barbara suggests that Aubrey might find a suitable gentleman at the Paddingham party.
She views the invitation as a stroke of luck that could lead to more opportunities.
Jeffrick looks skeptical as his wife reminds him of his desire to see Aubrey Merrick.
Barbara remains determined to convince her husband despite her internal nerves.
Aubrey is completely overwhelmed by the scale of the news.
The red-haired girl smiles with quiet, budding hope.
Barbara resolves to win her husband over no matter what it takes.
A beautiful, blooming garden signals a shift in the scene.
The gardener jovially celebrates Aubrey's chance to finally leave the estate grounds.
A deep blush sounds as Aubrey reacts to talk of gentlemen asking her out.
The gardener recounts a romantic tale about the Count's impulsive confession of love.
Aubrey finds it difficult to imagine such romantic feelings.
A soft fidget sounds as Aubrey's nerves begin to manifest. Aubrey's anxiety grows as she looks toward the upcoming social challenge.
She reflects on the foolish hope of her past. The grand mansion stands ready as the party day arrives.
Barbara prepares Aubrey's finery while Emily reacts with visible displeasure.
A sharp shout sounds as Emily feels betrayed by her mother's actions.
A quick turn sounds as Emily leaves her mother in a fit of disappointment.
Emily vents her resentment over Aubrey's lack of family blood.
Trin offers enthusiastic support to her nervous and elegantly dressed lady. Aubrey gives her maid a small, grateful smile.
Barbara checks on her niece's well-being before they depart Paliavet.
A rhythmic step sounds as a blonde man in a white suit approaches.
Barbara introduces the man as Jeffrick's nephew who will assist Aubrey at the party.
The blonde man offers a warm and charming smile.
He introduces himself to Aubrey as Nicholas Ayrton.
The carriage travels through the city streets toward the gala. A silent stare sounds as Nicholas watches Aubrey intently during the ride.
Aubrey nervously asks her companion if her outfit looks strange.
Nicholas reassures her that she looks absolutely beautiful in her red gown.
A heavy thump sounds in Aubrey's chest as she reacts to the compliment.
Nicholas notes that Aubrey does not seem to recognize him from before.
Aubrey tries to recall where she might have seen the blonde man.
She wonders if he could be a certain boy from her past memories. Nicholas gazes at her with focused, expectant attention.
He apologizes if his teasing has caused her any discomfort.
Nicholas mentions that he saw her years ago in the mansion's lobby. Aubrey smiles as she realizes their encounter was a brief, forgotten moment.
Aubrey looks away, quietly convinced that she will remain unrecognized by anyone from her past.
Inside the carriage, Nicholas asks if this is her first gala and expresses his pleasure in securing her invitation. The two ride together through the darkening evening as the carriage approaches their destination.
Nicholas explains that he used a favor with his friend Patrick to have her invited out of personal curiosity.
Aubrey blushes with a bright smile, expressing her sincere gratitude for the chance to attend such an event.
Reaching for his collar, Nicholas admits he thought it would be fun and is flattered by her excitement.
Aubrey observes her companion, thinking to herself that he seems like a genuinely kind young man.
The magnificent towers of the Pottingham estate reach toward a hazy, sunset-lit sky. Aubrey is awestruck by the scale of the palace-like mansion as Nicholas notes the immense wealth on display. Nicholas offers his hand with a polite invitation for Lady Aubrey to join him at the entrance. The pair steps into a brilliant, glowing light as they move toward the grand entrance of the gala. A bustling, opulent ballroom is revealed, filled with noble guests and shimmering chandeliers. A soft murmur sounds as Aubrey feels the weight of dozens of judging eyes fixed upon her.
Nicholas leans in with a gentle smile, assuring her that the attention is simply due to everyone's curiosity.
Spotting a friend in the crowd, Nicholas calls out to Lord Patrick to get his attention. Nicholas introduces the party's host, Lord Patrick Pottingham, while Aubrey offers a polite, nervous bow.
Lord Pottingham graciously welcomes Aubrey and inquires if her journey to the estate was pleasant.
The two men share a hearty laugh, leading Aubrey to realize they must be exceptionally close friends. Looking down over the grand hall, Nicholas advises her to simply enjoy herself without feeling pressured to socialize. Nicholas is suddenly called away and expresses his disappointment at having to leave her side so soon.
Aubrey gives him a supportive smile, granting him her blessing to attend to his social obligations.
Standing alone near the grand staircase, Aubrey feels small against the vast backdrop of the ballroom.
A soft glance sounds from nearby nobles as Aubrey feels increasingly awkward being on her own.
She considers trying to locate Emily to find a familiar face amidst the sea of strangers.
Aubrey carefully scans the crowded room, hoping to spot her cousin among the many guests.
The sharp profile of a dark-haired man with piercing blue eyes emerges from the crowd.
A heavy thump sounds in Aubrey's chest as she is gripped by a sudden, intense feeling of shock.
A sharp flinch sounds as she attempts to process the unexpected sight of the man from her memories.
She recalls the man who once saved her from being sold, hoping they might one day share a kind word.
Aubrey's face pales with sweat and distress as she realizes the person from her past is actually present.
She wonders why he is here and desperately hopes he hasn't recognized her in her current finery. A quick grab sounds as a strong hand suddenly seizes Aubrey's arm from behind. She is forced to look into the cold, intense blue eyes of the dark-haired man standing before her. The man's lips curve slightly as he prepares to speak to the startled red-haired girl. The dark-haired man pulls Aubrey into a dramatic and intimate embrace in the middle of the hall. Aubrey's thoughts race as she wonders why he followed her, managing only a soft word of thanks.
A knowing smirk sounds as the man reflects on the confirmation of his own suspicions.
He gazes down at her with a confident expression, asking if she truly remembers who he is.
Aubrey avoids his gaze and stammers her confusion, desperately trying to keep her past identity hidden.
He leans closer, noting that her elegant transformation nearly made it impossible for him to recognize her.
A rhythmic thump sounds as he remarks that anyone would mistake her for a perfect noble lady.
He leans in to whisper a secret title, calling her the lady he remembers from the slave island.
A quick step sounds as Aubrey freezes in place, realizing with horror that he has not forgotten her.
Nicholas reappears and places a protective hand on Aubrey's shoulder as he approaches the pair. The blonde man expresses concern for Aubrey's well-being, noting that she looks unwell. Nicholas jovially observes that they seem to have met already, and comments on the high profile of the party.
Aubrey's heart sinks as she wonders if Nicholas is already aware of her history as a slave. Nicholas prepares to officially introduce his friend to Aubrey to clear the awkward tension.
The dark-haired man is identified as Colhard Karnas, the powerful and enigmatic Count Levon. Nicholas introduces Aubrey to the Count, who formally acknowledges the red-haired girl with a heavy gaze. Aubrey stammers a greeting while internally panicking, realizing she cannot hope to deceive the man standing before her.
Count Levon maintains a cool demeanor as he formally greets the nervous red-haired girl.
A series of heavy thump sounds echo through the silence as the two characters share a tense, wordless exchange. A final rhythmic thump sounds before the Count makes a sudden turn, ending their brief and awkward confrontation.
Nicholas asks his friend when he arrived in Marblin and inquires about his brother while Aubrey remains visibly flustered between them.
The Count remarks that the fresh environment should aid in a recovery as Aubrey attempts to hide herself from his intense scrutiny. As Aubrey looks away, she is struck by the incredible realization that this man is the very same person from her past.
A soft mutter sounds as Aubrey reflects on how she never expected their paths to cross again after so many years.
She feels a deep sense of irony, meeting the one person she wished to avoid at the exact moment she felt most vulnerable.
Aubrey finds the memory of the rest of the gala blurred and difficult to recall following her encounter with the Count.
She remembers ignoring her poor dancing and the many times she stepped on her partner's toes in her haste to leave the event. The lingering echo of the Count's voice suggests that her transformation nearly made her unrecognizable to him.
Back in the safety of her room, a nervous gnaw sounds as Aubrey recalls his chilling greeting referring to her time on the slave island.
She is consumed by anxiety, realizing that while he knows her dark history, she knows nothing of him beyond his name.
Aubrey struggles with the imbalance of power between them, haunted by the secret he holds over her.
Trin enters the room and calls out to her lady with a concerned expression.
A rhythmic step sounds as the maid brings a tray of food, pleading with her distraught mistress to eat a little something. Trin worries that something occurred at the party and asks if Emily was the cause of her current distress. The maid looks down at the bowl of soup, repeating Aubrey's name in a gentle attempt to get her attention.
Trin assumes Emily must have done something cruel, especially since Aubrey looked so stunning in her formal attire.
A soft pat sounds as Trin comforts her lady, suspecting that Emily might have even resorted to physical confrontation out of jealousy.
A quick glance sounds as Aubrey looks up, listening as Trin suggests they visit the garden after she finishes her meal.
Aubrey suddenly asks her maid if she has any information regarding the man known as Duke Karnas.
She pictures the stern face of the Count, while Trin looks surprised by the sudden curiosity about the high-ranking noble. Trin promises to share what she knows on the condition that Aubrey eats her food first.
The maid feeds a small spoonful to the girl while asking why she has developed such a sudden interest in him. Aubrey quickly denies having any special reason or romantic feelings for the man when questioned by her maid.
A heavy sigh sounds as Trin expresses her hope that Aubrey finds a good man, but specifically wishes it isn't him.
Trin admits the Count is widely considered handsome but stops herself before revealing a more troubling detail. The maid reveals the scandalous rumor that the man is actually the illegitimate son of Duke Karnas. She explains that his reputation and good looks cause women to flock to him despite his complicated background. Trin asks if the Count lived up to the rumors of his beauty during their brief meeting at the party.
Aubrey remains uncertain, which brings a sense of relief to the protective maid who worries for her well-being.
Trin warns that he is off limits because both Barbara and Emily likely have their own intentions for him.
The maid suggests that Emily may have fallen for his appearance, but a dark sense of foreboding surrounds the Count's image.
Aubrey is warned that getting involved with such a dangerous man could only lead to misfortune. Trin sternly advises her lady to stay as far away from the Count as possible. Barbara sits elegantly in the drawing room, enjoying a quiet moment with a cup of tea.
She describes the party as a successful event despite the fatigue and expresses regret over Aubrey's lack of dancing lessons.
Barbara mentions her surprise at learning that the host, Lord Patrick, had invited Aubrey to dance.
A soft blush sounds as Aubrey recalls her many mistakes on the dance floor, though Barbara assures her it is of no consequence.
Barbara shares that Nicholas spoke very highly of her, praising her social skills and pleasant personality.
The older woman predicts a busy social calendar ahead, though Aubrey looks increasingly overwhelmed by the prospect. Recalling the Count's piercing gaze, Aubrey realizes she has no desire to return to the high society world that terrifies her. She looks down at her feet, wishing only for a return to the quiet and secluded life she once knew. A sharp clink sounds as a teacup is set down, and Barbara mentions a detail she nearly forgot to share. Aubrey is horrified to learn that they are planning a visit to the Carnus estate and are expecting her to accompany them.
A rhythmic clip-clop sounds as a carriage makes its way through the narrow cobblestone streets.
A heavy pew sounds from an observer who reflects on how Aubrey defies the rumors. The mysterious observer contemplates Aubrey Sandalwood.
Two high society men whisper about Count Levent's decision to hide a lady away, assuming she was unattractive.
The onlookers are proven wrong as they admire the graceful and beautiful red-haired woman standing before them. Aubrey is shaken by the description of herself as graceful, recalling the woman who once treated her with utter disgust.
A sharp scowl sounds as Count Levent gazes intensely while holding a cigar between his fingers.
A rhythmic rattle sounds as a black carriage with gold accents approaches a grand manor. The carriage door is thrown open as the Count steps out to a butler's announcement that the lady of the house awaits him. A series of steady step sounds echo as the butler informs the Count that Countess Levent and her daughter are in the drawing room. A sharp flinch sounds as the dark-haired man reacts with sudden intensity. Aubrey looks up with wide, startled eyes as she wonders who has arrived at the manor. Barbara smiles warmly as she reflects on how Emily has grown into a lovely young lady. Countess Levent humbly dismisses the praise while Barbara and the others enjoy a pleasant social gathering in the grand drawing room. Emily turns to the Duchess and asks if she may inquire about something specific. A sudden cough sounds as Emily begins to ask about the Count's whereabouts.
A series of heavy cough sounds erupt from Aubrey as she struggles to catch her breath.
Barbara expresses immediate concern for Aubrey, offering her tea to soothe her throat.
A light giggle sounds as Barbara assumes Aubrey's distress is merely the result of social nerves.
A sharp glare sounds as Barbara remarks that Aubrey clearly isn't accustomed to such formal social environments. Countess Levent notices Aubrey's boredom and suggests she step outside for some fresh air.
Aubrey realizes she is being dismissed and quietly agrees to leave the room.
A soft step sounds as Aubrey walks away from the seating area, leaving the other women behind. A sudden dun sounds as the Count enters the room, apologizing to the Duchess for his late arrival. Count Levent formally addresses both the Countess and Lady Emily as he joins the party.
A quick grab sounds as Emily excitedly welcomes the Count, assuring him that his lateness is of no concern.
Barbara compliments Count Levent on his impressive successes and asks how he feels about returning home.
The group is seen from above as they settle around a table for their formal discussion.
A nervous clench sounds as Aubrey grips her dress, while Barbara notes that Levent is thriving under the Count's leadership.
A hearty ha-ha sounds as Count Levent laughs, offering his belated congratulations on Aubrey's social debut.
Aubrey is confused by the change in his voice, wondering why he is being so kind after his cold behavior the previous night. The Count remarks that Aubrey was just a small girl when he last saw her. A soft glance sounds as Count Levent observes that she has grown into a respectable young lady, causing Aubrey to flinch. He addresses Countess Levent about her pride while she expresses her worries about finding a suitable partner for her daughter. A soft giggle sounds as Barbara reassures the Countess that Count Levent is a capable man and there is no need for worry. Aubrey looks up in sudden realization of what the adults are discussing. She understands with dread that the gathering was arranged specifically to negotiate a marriage between the families. Aubrey recalls the rumors about the Count being an illegitimate child, but notices that no one in the room treats him with contempt. A quiet sounds as Aubrey drinks her tea, contemplating whether the scandalous rumors were actually false. A sudden pfft sounds as Aubrey spits out her tea when the Count asks if she returned home safely the night of the party. A series of sharp cough sounds continue as Barbara and Emily stare at the red-haired girl with profound annoyance. A soft hand sounds as a handkerchief is extended toward the struggling Aubrey.
Count Levon stands over the seated girl, offering his cloth to help her clean up the mess.
He commands a servant to bring warm water while Aubrey hides her face behind the handkerchief in total humiliation.
A heavy, teary sounds as Aubrey's eyes well up with shame over her public mistake.
A quick reach sounds as the Count places his hand on Aubrey's shoulder. Count Levon notes her obvious nervousness as he leans over her.
Aubrey internally laments her decision to attend the meeting.
Emily and Barbara watch the interaction with cold, judgmental expressions.
Aubrey's hands remain clenched around the damp handkerchief.
She tries to convince herself that nothing significant will happen despite her awkwardness. Back in her bed, Aubrey curls up and repeats to herself that things will be fine.
Aubrey realizes that the Count is intentionally pressuring her by bringing up her past in front of others.
Aubrey is consumed by the terrifying thought that the Count knows her secret and could use it to have her cast out of the house.
A sudden dash sounds as she realizes she must act immediately, deciding she can no longer bear the thought of visiting the Karnas residence.
A soft step sounds as Aubrey hurried through the hallway toward her aunt's room. She pauses before the grand double doors of the drawing room.
Inside, the Countess argues that they shouldn't be in such a rush to marry Emily off to Count Levon.
Count Levon erupts in anger, demanding to know why his daughter is being paired with such a man.
The Countess retorts that Emily likes him and insists that their daughter should at least be allowed to share tea with him.
The blonde-haired man snaps back that it is her responsibility to prevent their daughter from obsessing over a man he considers a scoundrel.
A heavy sigh sounds as he puffs on his cigar, dismissing the man as only half of the Karnas bloodline. Aubrey freezes outside the door as a sharp voice from within labels someone a gypsy.
She is stunned as she realizes the scandalous rumors about the man being an illegitimate child are actually true.
She contemplates how this revelation could potentially be used to her advantage.
Aubrey realizes that despite his origins, the current political situation has shifted in his favor.
The couple continues their private conversation in the lavishly decorated room.
Aubrey reflects on the fact that Lord Karnas has been ill and away for years, leaving a power vacuum in his absence.
She wonders why the Duke would grant a title to an illegitimate child unless he intended for him to become the true successor. The Countess thinks the Duke would be crazy, but her husband argues the Duke will do anything to ensure his lineage continues.
Count Levon observes that more people are beginning to believe the illegitimate son will indeed become the next Duke Karnas.
He remains defiant, insisting that his daughter Emily is destined to become the Duchess Pottingham regardless of the rumors. The Countess looks at her husband with a mixture of concern and resignation.
He warns his wife to be careful and strictly forbids her from associating with the man again.
A rhythmic step sounds as he walks away, telling her that she needs to know when to give up.
Aubrey quietly retreats down the hallway, her mind racing with the new information she has gathered.
Aubrey reflects on her mistake, realizing she was wrong to think she had found a weakness to exploit.
She looks at a portrait of Colehart Karnas, acknowledging that the man seemingly possesses no vulnerabilities.
She is haunted by the fact that the man who knows her deepest secret is a powerful noble being groomed for succession.
A quiet scribble sounds as Aubrey writes at her desk, noting that her relatives have finally departed for the day.
She knows they will be gone late into the evening due to the Royal Academy exhibition.
A soft scribble sounds as Aubrey worries about her life falling apart, while Trin enters to ensure she is eating as ordered.
A sharp slam sounds as a hand is brought down firmly onto the desk.
Trin asks her mistress if she is even listening, catching her in a moment of deep distraction.
Aubrey offers a weak smile and lies, claiming that her distress is merely the result of being tired.
She hands a set of papers to the maid, asking her to deliver them as thanks to the Pottinghams and Nicholas.
Trin exits the room to carry out the request.
A heavy slump sounds as Aubrey collapses back into her chair, exhausted by her own anxiety. Her eyes snap open in a moment of sudden realization.
She recalls how kind he was during tea, remembering how all the other ladies were captivated by his charm.
Aubrey grips her handkerchief, wondering if she has completely misjudged the man's intentions.
She dares to hope that he might actually be a gentleman who is willing to overlook her troubled past.
She decides that with everyone gone, she must take the chance to confront the situation rather than sitting in fear.
Aubrey resolves to go and speak with Colehart directly.
Aubrey arrives at the grand estate only to be told by a butler that Master Colehart is currently out. She is dismayed to learn he is at the exhibition and won't return until late, realizing she has already sent her carriage away.
She tentatively asks the butler if she might be allowed to wait for his return.
The butler hesitates, pointing out that she has no appointment and that it will be a very long wait.
Aubrey suspects she is being turned away because of her lack of noble status, but asks to wait outside. She holds up a finger, pleading for just 1 hour of his time.
The butler reluctantly agrees to let her wait, though Aubrey looks nervous about the situation. Aubrey stands alone in front of the massive estate as the evening shadows begin to lengthen.
A soft blush sounds as she worries about whether she is foolishly waiting for a man who may never come.
Determined not to live in fear, Aubrey takes her only chance today as a carriage rattles through the streets. Aubrey waits outside the grand estate, her head turning as a sudden rattle sounds from a nearby carriage.
A nervous clench sounds as she grips her dress, sensing his arrival.
She instinctively feels his presence inside the approaching vehicle. Aubrey stands frozen as the dark-haired man finally emerges from the carriage. His leather shoe meets the pavement as he recognizes her with a start. Coulthard asks what she is doing there, while Aubrey wonders why he looks so disheveled and worried. The butler explains that the red-haired lady insisted on seeing him urgently.
A rhythmic step sounds as Coulthard leads her inside without a word.
Aubrey follows him, feeling dejected and certain that her waiting was in vain.
She watches him walk away with his attendant toward the manor's grand interior.
A quick dash sounds as the butler returns to Aubrey's side.
The man informs her that she has been granted an audience in the study. Seated behind his desk, Coulthard looks up from his papers and simply says, "So."
Coulthard asks what brought her here, while Aubrey tries to stay calm before stammering that she came to return his handkerchief.
A soft play sounds as she sets the cloth down, apologizing for her behavior at the tea party because she isn't used to such settings, prompting him to question what she means.
A heavy thump sounds from her heart as she admits she isn't accustomed to social gatherings yet.
She recalls the sunset on the island, intending to finally thank him for his help.
Aubrey exhales, confessing that she has never been able to bring up that day on her own, but she truly wanted to express her gratitude.
She notes that it wasn't the best time for a proper greeting, her mind flashing back to a moment of distress.
Coulthard addresses her as Miss Sandalwood, while Aubrey apologizes for the rude, unannounced visit before asking for a favor. Coulthard sighs as the red-haired girl desperately begs him not to tell anyone about her past. Coulthard stares at her with piercing blue eyes and asks if she is referring to the fact that she was a slave. A sudden dun sounds as Aubrey's eyes go wide with absolute terror and shock. He stares at her coldly, repeating his question.
A second dun sounds as the word slave echoes in her mind, leaving her paralyzed with fear.
She stands in stunned silence, her mouth trembling at the revelation.
A frantic shake sounds as Aubrey lunges forward to grab his shirt, demanding to know what he plans to do to her. Coulthard remains calm as she shouts, asking why he is tormenting her when all she wanted was to live. A loud shout sounds as she cries out in agony, asking what she could have possibly done so wrong. A gentle stroke sounds as he touches her face, mocking the idea that he would ever spread such a pitiful story. A soft touch sounds against her skin as he tells her she has made a grave mistake.
He leans in, noting that her desperation to hide her background suggests Count Levent is completely unaware of the truth.
A heavy exhale sounds as Coulthard sits alone, smoking a cigar and whispering Aubrey's name to himself.
He reflects on his own life as an illegitimate child of the Carnus family, born into a world of hardship.
A dark smirk sounds as he notes that despite everything he's seen, there are still things he hasn't experienced. The scene shifts back to 10 years ago. A noblewoman screams that a young child is clearly not in his right mind.
She demands to know why else he would do something so horrific.
At 13, Coulthard was viewed by the Duchess as mentally ill.
He reflects that the Duchess's assessment wasn't entirely wrong.
Left alone after his mother's death, he was dumped like baggage at the Carnus mansion as an unwanted, illegitimate son. While others thought he was adjusting, years of physical and emotional abuse took a severe toll on his psyche. He began exhibiting strange symptoms, wandering the halls at night and binging on food in secret. The trauma escalated until he began using knives on his own arms, leading the Duchess to fear his influence on her son, Peterson. Duke Carnus eventually exiled him from the estate under the pretense of needing rest. On his 17th birthday, he received an urgent summons back to the very family that had cast him out.
During the voyage back, a ship malfunction forced them to anchor briefly at Crisis Island.
Standing alone on the pier, he contemplated ending his life rather than returning to be a punching bag for his family. He felt that his life could end at any moment, needing only the smallest bit of motivation to finally let go. A firm grab sounds as Coulthard reflects on how he once considered his own life completely worthless. He remembers the young red-haired girl's desperate plea for help, seeing his own suffering reflected in her eyes. He admits that he decided to save her that day on a sudden, impulsive whim. A fragile life begins to transform. Coulthard notes his surprise that the girl he thought would perish instead returned as a noblewoman supported by the Levents. A rhythmic knock sounds as he muses on her survival, noting her new position is as beautiful as it is precarious. A servant calls out from behind the door to gain his master's attention. The man informs Coulthard that the Duke has requested his presence in the banquet hall. A soft sizzle sounds as Coulthard extinguishes his cigar, sighing at the constant demands on his time.
A heavy step sounds as he walks away, frustrated that he is never left in peace for long. Duke Karnas looks up from the table to ask his son if his recent business dealings are finished.
Coulthard bows respectfully, confirming that he completed the work quickly thanks to the Duke and the King's support.
A dark smirk sounds as the Duke reacts to the news with visible satisfaction. The Duke reflects on how he never expected Coulthard to turn a desolate area into such a prosperous commercial district.
He acknowledges that Coulthard achieved this massive success without taking any financial help from the family.
The city of Lavon has become a thriving hub that now rivals the capital itself.
A dark smirk sounds as the Duke concludes that his initial judgment of his son's potential was correct.
A sharp scoff sounds as the Duchess mockingly suggests he rest, while Coulthard sarcastically thanks her for her insincere concern.
She warns him that his legitimate brother will be home soon, subtly reminding him of his precarious standing.
Coulthard retorts that his brother's return will be a relief so he can finally stop visiting this house.
A second scoff sounds as the Duchess calls him insolent before mentioning an unexpected visitor from the Levent family. She notes that the guest was the woman the Levents are currently sponsoring.
The Duchess describes the girl as being deceptively mild-mannered during their brief encounter. She recalls Aubrey's clumsy debut where she stepped on Lord Pottingham's foot while dancing.
The couple speculates that Count Levent is only trying to marry her off quickly to get her out of his home.
They assume the girl is merely a social climber using the Levents to secure a noble husband. A heavy sigh sounds as the Duchess wonders why someone like her would visit Coulthard specifically.
A sharp glance sounds as she suggests Aubrey might have predatory or impure intentions toward him.
A quiet whisper sounds as Coulthard listens to their judgmental gossip about his gentlemanly behavior at tea.
A sharp scoff sounds as he rejects the idea that Aubrey is motivated by his kindness and ignores the Duchess's warnings.
A soft raise sounds as he holds up the handkerchief, thinking that she only came to return it with no hidden agenda.
A deep scowl sounds as he informs his mother that she is wrong and that the lady has no ulterior motives.
A quick stand sounds as Coulthard abruptly ends the dinner and prepares to take his leave.
The Duchess stops him, requesting that he attend a dinner party being hosted by the Levents. A deep frown sounds as she pressures him to help her maintain the family's dignity by finally attending a social event.
Coulthard remains silent as his mind focuses on the image of the troubled red-haired woman. He agrees to go, curious to see what kind of reaction Aubrey will have when they meet again.
The scene shifts to the lush, sunlit grounds of a massive garden estate. A hollow blank sounds as Aubrey stares into the distance, her expression lost in deep thought.
A sudden jolt sounds as she is startled by a voice breaking through her trance.
An elderly gardener asks if she is finished with her work and what she plans to do next.
He kindly offers her a glass of orange juice as a way to take a break.
They walk toward a small wooden cabin as he asks if something is bothering her. Inside the hut, he asks if she had a disagreement with Emily, but Aubrey nervously denies it. A heavy, silent sounds as she remains unable to voice the true source of her anxiety.
The man mentions that he heard Lord Pottingham ask her to dance and asks if she met anyone else.
Aubrey admits she didn't dance with anyone else because she was embarrassed by her clumsy mistakes. A tight hold sounds as she regrets even attending the party while the gardener looks on with concern. The old man is taken aback by her sudden and intense emotional distress. Aubrey confesses that she is terrified of running into a certain person ever again.
The gardener notes Aubrey's lingering distrust since the party and her desire to avoid a certain individual.
He expresses his concern that someone may have treated the young lady poorly during the event.
A quick reach sounds as the gardener asks if her anxiety was caused by a man.
A furious cry sounds as the mustachioed man vows to teach the person who upset her a lesson.
Aubrey clarifies it wasn't like that, but the man encourages her to be open about this person she is on bad relations with.
Aubrey wonders if she could even describe her situation with Coulthard Karnas as a quarrel before the man asks if they had an argument.
She admits she believes the man simply dislikes her, which leaves the gardener shocked.
The man fiercely insists that she has done nothing wrong.
Chibi Aubrey privately regrets having shared anything about the matter at all.
Aubrey resolves to forget about the man and trust his promise to refrain from spreading rumors.
She decides to focus on avoiding him entirely while the gardener continues his animated protest.
The gardener asks if she plans to remain in the garden hut for much longer.
He explains he must leave to trim the bushes in preparation for the upcoming dinner party. Aubrey is caught off guard by the mention of a dinner party. The man lists the families invited, including the Aratons, the Pottinghams, and the Karnas family.
Aubrey's expression becomes frozen in a look of pure terror.
The scene shifts to the grand dining room where the Levents' dinner party has begun.
Seated among the guests, Aubrey feels overwhelmed and unsure of how to navigate the social setting.
She considers retreating to her room the moment dinner ends while the blonde Nicholas smiles nearby.
A servant informs the madam that the musicians have arrived, and she prepares to lead the guests away.
Aubrey watches her leave, intending to catch Aunt Barbara and ask for permission to go rest.
A click-clack sounds as Aubrey stands from her seat to follow the departing crowd.
A clack sounds as she walks quickly across the tiled floor.
She observes the grand foyer, noting that the madame appears far too busy for a private conversation.
A step sounds as Aubrey moves through the hall, fearing she won't have another chance to speak.
A gasp sounds as she is startled by a voice calling out her name. A quick turn sounds as Aubrey spins around with a worried expression.
Nicholas asks where she's going in such a rush, and Aubrey mentions her need to talk to Aunt Barbara.
Relieved it isn't call hard, Aubrey relaxes and asks Nicholas if the dining hall gathering has already ended.
Nicholas explains he stepped out early because he finds the environment boring and doesn't smoke cigars.
A shared laugh sounds as the two enjoy a light-hearted moment of mirth together.
Nicholas requests a tour of the garden, while Aubrey decides it would be best to step outside.
Aubrey agrees, thinking it will be harder for anyone to summon her if she is busy walking with Nicholas.
They wander through the lush rose garden as Nicholas admires the perfect symmetry of the grounds. Aubrey giggles as Nicholas admits he just wanted an excuse for a walk, realizing she is already quite familiar with the place.
Aubrey observes the beautiful scenery and praises the gardener's diligent daily care.
Nicholas playfully asks if Emily is the person Aubrey holds in the highest regard.
A step sounds as Nicholas notes that the first and second places in her heart are already taken.
He gazes at her with a bright, charming smile.
Aubrey looks back at him with wide, surprised eyes.
A pfft sounds as Aubrey breaks into a genuine, spontaneous laugh.
Aubrey finds Nicholas's naive behavior quite amusing while he admits to feeling a bit embarrassed.
She continues to laugh as a flustered Nicholas begs her to stop.
From a high balcony, Coulthard looks down and spots the two of them walking through the gardens.
Coulthard watches them with a deep, visible scowl, finding the entire scene unbelievable.
He reflects bitterly that she never makes that kind of happy expression when she is with him.
Nicholas asks Aubrey how she originally came to live with the Levant family.
Aubrey points toward the distant landscape to give her answer.
She indicates the far mountain, explaining it was the place where she was discovered as a young child.
Nicholas immediately offers an apology for his prying question, though Aubrey insists the story isn't a serious matter.
Aubrey reflects on how Nicholas's presence brings a sense of warmth to her heart and lifts her spirits.
Nicholas asks about her life before arriving at the estate, causing her to visibly stiffen with anxiety.
Aubrey tries to deflect by saying her past isn't a fun story, but Nicholas insists he wants to hear her real account.
He admits he has only ever heard rumors and wishes to know the truth directly from her.
Aubrey agrees to share her story, provided he answers her questions first.
Nicholas readily agrees to her condition with a curious expression.
She asks what specific rumors have been circulating about her in social circles.
Nicholas hesitates, noting that the rumors are difficult to discuss directly with her.
Aubrey reminds him of his promise to be open and tell her the truth.
Her earnestness leaves Nicholas feeling slightly flustered and awkward in the garden.
He offers a soft, kind smile before beginning to explain the gossip.
Nicholas shares that some see her as a hidden beauty under the special protection of Count Levant.
He notes that many of the rumors are actually quite complimentary, though Aubrey remains skeptical.
He eventually admits there are darker whispers claiming she is an illegitimate child of the Count.
Nicholas quickly dismisses the negative gossip as baseless talk from uninformed people.
He reassures her that her current status as the Countess's niece is all that matters to everyone now.
A soft gaze from Nicholas conveys his genuine concern for her well-being.
Aubrey smiles to herself, realizing that none of the rumors even come close to the truth of her past. Returning to the garden path, Nicholas prompts her to begin her own tale as promised.
Aubrey starts her fabricated story, choosing to hide the truth of her time on Crisis Island.
She describes a childhood in Finsweed that ended when her father passed away when she was very young.
She recounts how the plague took her mother, leaving her as a struggling orphan running errands for merchants. She tells him she fled into the mountains to protect her small savings from a group of orphans chasing her.
A heavy silence follows as the weight of her fake narrative settles over the scene.
Nicholas asks if the Countess found her, but Aubrey explains it was a stable keeper who discovered her. She attributes her survival to the man's regular morning mountain walks that eventually led him to her. Nicholas admits he assumed she had always lived in comfort, which Aubrey quickly corrects. A look of deep pity and concern crosses Nicholas's face as he listens to her struggle.
He tries to stop her from speaking poorly of her own history with a firm look.
Nicholas places a hand on her, insisting that her past rough patch doesn't diminish her worth. Internally, Aubrey finds it absurd that her traumatic, hellish life is dismissed as a simple rough patch. She wonders if Nicholas could ever truly comprehend the depth of the hardships she has actually faced. Aubrey masks her cynicism with a polite smile and a word of thanks for his kindness. Nicholas suggests returning to the party before the other guests begin looking for them.
A quiet moment follows as Aubrey considers the strange path her life has taken.
The scene transitions back to the grand ballroom where the dinner party is in full swing. They enter the grand hall where guests are gathered around a piano performance. A guest's voice calls out from the crowd asking where the two of them have been hiding.
Nicholas cheerily explains they were just taking a walk together while the play ended.
His brown-haired companion notes how well they seem to be getting along after their chat. A sudden, sharp voice cuts through the air, addressing Aubrey by the name Miss Sandalwood.
Nicholas is taken aback and flustered by the sudden, authoritative interruption from off-screen. Nicholas's companion looks surprised as Nicholas explains Aubrey was sharing her life story.
Aubrey turns in alarm as the brown-haired man requests to hear her story as well.
Aubrey had previously hoped the man she feared wasn't around to overhear her conversation.
The brown-haired man excitedly repeats the details of Aubrey's mountain escape to the group. Aubrey breaks into a cold sweat, realizing she is trapped in the lie she just told Nicholas. Her eyes widen in a sudden flinch of terror as a familiar voice sounds from behind.
The black-haired Coalhard is revealed sitting right behind her with a cold, mocking presence. Coalhard leans in with a dark smirk, pointedly asking if she was really able to cross that great mountain.
Aubrey looks on in silent distress as the guests continue praising the courage in her fabricated life story.
Her hands clench the fabric of her skirt as she internally begs them to stop romanticizing her painful, fake past.
Aubrey sits frozen with worry as the black-haired Coalhard looms behind her, his presence a constant threat to her facade.
A cold shudder runs through Aubrey as Coalhard mentions Crisis Island, the one place she truly hoped to leave forgotten.
Coalhard dismisses the grim topic for now, promising to share the details with the men at a more appropriate time.
Aubrey's heart sinks as she realizes Coalhard's knowledge of the island puts her secret branding at risk of being identified.
With a sharp, calculating smile, Coalhard pointedly asked Aubrey if she ever found a way to repay her life's savior.
He maintains his intense gaze as Aubrey struggles to process his question about the true price of her survival.
She reflects bitterly on the reality that her repayment was merely the cost of a slave begging for her freedom.
Shadows deepen around the two as a silent, manipulative ultimatum regarding her secret hangs heavily in the air.
A sharp bite sounds as Aubrey draws blood from her lip, reluctantly agreeing to whatever terms Coalhard has set.
Coalhard stares coldly into the distance, his eyes fixed on uncovering the true nature of the mystery surrounding her.
Back in the servants' quarters, the maids gossiping in their beds are certain that Emily must have bullied Aubrey again.
One maid shrugs off the concern, noting that despite Aubrey's strange behavior, she and Emily seem to be dining peacefully.
The brown-haired maid argues with frustration that no one would dare cause a scene in front of the Countess.
Soft whispers sound as they discuss how Emily's usual bullying wouldn't cause such a sudden and total change in Aubrey.
A sharp glare sounds as the maids press Trin for information about Aubrey's recent outing, but she quickly denies everything.
Trin looks away with a troubled expression, secretly recalling how Aubrey has been acting differently since visiting the Carnus estate.
A sense of unease settles over Trin as she admits to herself that something has definitely felt wrong lately.
Trin remembers finding Aubrey looking completely lifeless and flushed with the clear marks of recent tears on her face.
She stares into the darkness, convinced that something traumatic must have happened to her mistress during that secret visit.
Trin observes Aubrey from behind, noting how her brief spark of energy at the party vanished the moment the guests left.
Another maid smiles mischievously, suggesting that Aubrey's strange illness might actually be a case of secret lovesickness.
The gossip shifts to the party's many suitors, with the maids debating whether Aubrey has fallen for Lord Pottingham or Nicholas.
A worried sound escapes Trin as the other maids joke about the possibility of Aubrey being rejected by a secret crush.
Chibi Trin clutches her head in annoyance, wondering how the conversation could have devolved into such mindless romantic speculation.
The dark-haired maid leans in, lowering her voice to suggest that Aubrey has always been fundamentally strange and secretive.
Aubrey stands alone in her thoughts as the maids list her unusual habits, like her refusal to ever be helped with bathing.
A sudden flinch sounds as Trin reacts to the cruel suggestion that there might be something physically wrong with Aubrey's body.
The maids begin laughing at increasingly absurd theories about Aubrey's appearance until Trin finally reaches her breaking point.
A sharp shout sounds as Trin snaps at the others, demanding they stop their disrespectful and mindless gossip immediately.
The head maid looks back with confusion, defensively claiming that their observations about Aubrey's behavior are simply the truth. A quiet stammer sounds as Trin is cornered by the fact that even she, the closest servant, is never allowed in the bath.
The maids exchange knowing looks, using the fact that no one has ever seen Aubrey unclothed as proof of a hidden deformity.
A sharp clench sounds as Trin grips her apron, fearing the maids believe Aubrey's secret was finally exposed at the dinner party.
Trin bellows a final furious denial before ordering everyone to stop their nonsense and go to sleep at once.
A thunderous slam sounds as the door is thrown shut, punctuating Trin's anger as she storms out of the room.
A heavy pant sounds as Trin leans against the wall in the hallway, her heart racing from the stress of the argument.
Trin closes her eyes as a teary look sounds, acknowledging to herself that she has always found Aubrey's behavior unusual.
Her mind drifts back to the very first day she met Aubrey and the strange circumstances of their initial encounter.
Trin recalls the heartbreaking sight of the young redhead wearing her dress backwards with an expression of profound sadness. A cheerful melody sounds in the memory as Chibi Trin reached out to help the flustered girl fix her tangled clothing.
The memory shifts to a moment of pure shock as Trin first caught sight of the intricate branding on Aubrey's shoulder.
Trin looks down sadly, grateful that she had the sense to keep the discovery of the mysterious mark to herself.
She resolves to continue protecting Aubrey, knowing that the girl is already an outsider who couldn't handle more scrutiny. Trin imagines a future where a powerful protector can finally silence the rumors and give Aubrey the happiness she deserves.
Looking at the grand estate, she wonders if Nicholas or another noble could be the one to truly save her mistress.
A heavy dun sounds as Aubrey suddenly appears and tells Trin that she must go see Count Levon immediately.
A shocked dun sounds as Chibi Trin gasps, accidentally blurting out Coalheart's name in her state of total confusion. Trin frantically tries to talk Aubrey out of leaving while she is unwell, but Aubrey insists she has urgent questions for him. Trin looks flustered while denying any thought of him as a potential husband.
Trin warns that Emily would be furious and that Madame likely won't permit her to leave.
Aubrey calls out to Trin with a serious, shadowed expression. Aubrey stares ahead with a desperate look, pleading for Trin's help.
She explains that she has a question she must urgently ask him in person. A teary look sounds as Trin reluctantly agrees to Aubrey's request.
Aubrey reflects on how she has been agonizing over her situation for several days.
She worries that she will continue running into him as long as he is involved with Emily.
Coldheart stands with his arms crossed, a figure of constant anxiety in Aubrey's mind.
Aubrey wonders if confronting him will finally end the life she is currently leading.
Aubrey recalls Coldheart's taunting inquiry about whether she had ever repaid her savior.
She resolves to settle her debt with the despicable yet beautiful man. A wide view of the grand estate gardens appears as Aubrey prepares her secret letter.
Coalheart's voice mockingly asks if she is truly willing to give him what he wants.
A cross sounds as Coalheart folds his arms and demands that she simply disappear.
Coldheart looks ahead with a cold gaze, calling Aubrey a genuine bother.
Aubrey looks back with a sharp, defiant expression and firmly tells him no.
A man with glasses and a ponytail walks through the grand hallway.
Aubrey confirms her identity as the man informs her that she is expected inside.
Aubrey enters a private room where she finds Coalheart waiting for her.
Coalheart notes that she is late while addressing her by the name Miss Sandalwood.
Aubrey apologizes for her tardiness, explaining she had to get permission from her aunt.
Coalheart tells her to skip the small talk and get straight to the point of her visit.
He points out that they are alone, noting the private nature of her request. Aubrey remains silent as Coalheart continues to analyze the secrecy of their meeting.
A bite sounds as Aubrey nervously chews her lip, asking what he wants from her.
A single bubble sounds as a brief question is raised during the tense silence.
Aubrey brings up his previous question about her savior and expresses her desire for repayment.
Aubrey demands he name his price, while Coalheart scoffs at her attempt to bargain.
A step sounds as Coalheart moves closer to Aubrey, causing her to look up in surprise. Coalheart leans in and takes her chin in his hand, forcing her to meet his gaze.
The two remain in a close, silent confrontation as the tension between them peaks.
A thump sounds as Aubrey realizes how uncomfortably close he has moved toward her.
A stop sounds as Aubrey flinches away from his sudden and intense proximity.
A block sounds as Aubrey pushes him back, her face flushed with embarrassment.
Coalheart mockingly asks what he can take if her body is considered off-limits. Aubrey is shocked by his crude remark and asks him what he is implying.
Coalheart smiles dismissively, telling her he has no interest in her and she needn't worry.
Aubrey tells him to be honest and explain his motives for the day. A clench sounds as Aubrey grabs her skirt and yells about the island. Aubrey reminds him of his promise of secrecy, furious that he brought up Crisis Island. Coalheart claims he is innocent, stating that Patrick was the one who actually mentioned the island. He watches her intently, thinking she was too flustered to realize who spoke first.
Coalheart bluntly tells Aubrey that her own anxiety is entirely her own fault.
An exhale sounds as Coalheart tells her she should never have lied in the first place.
A smile sounds as Coalheart repeats his dark wish for her to simply disappear.
Coalheart reflects on how her struggle to fit in reminds him of his own desperate childhood.
A sigh sounds as Aubrey looks down and tells him she cannot do what he asks. Coalheart stares at her with a questioning look, asking for the reason behind her refusal. Aubrey looks at him with resolve, declaring she came here to live and will survive. Coalheart stares at the smoldering cigar in the ashtray, asking Aubrey what she could possibly find attractive about staying in noble society. Aubrey looks him in the eye, questioning if he believes he can truly fix his own fate, just as he did when the Duke brought in an illegitimate child and gave him a title.
A dark background emphasizes the weight of her words as she notes his transition from an illegitimate child to a successful businessman.
She firmly declares that there is no reason she cannot achieve what he did by becoming a proper lady, promising to never ask for his help again. Aubrey looks at Count Levon with a plea in her eyes, asking him to consider an alternative way for her to settle her debt. Coulthard remains in his chair, smoking silently as the moonlight filters through the window of the quiet room.
He reflects on her sudden change in demeanor, wondering if she is bold or simply fearless compared to the fragile girl she once was.
A soft bed of white flowers frames his thoughts as he admits he didn't expect her to resolve to become a lady who refuses to beg for help.
He dismisses her ambitious resolve as a pointless endeavor, his scarred hand resting near his face in the shadows.
A sharp smack sounds as a memory of a harsh woman yelling at a young Coulthard flashes through his mind, asking when he will ever learn.
A sudden flinch sounds as the young boy looks up in terror, hearing the cold order to bring the switch for his punishment.
A desperate kneel sounds as the boy begs his mother for forgiveness, promising never to repeat his mistake during a meal.
A rough reach sounds as the woman grabs his arm, ordering him to get his filthy hands off her and stand up straight.
A series of sharp smacks and pained screams sound, echoing through the dark and oppressive halls of his childhood home.
A final, agonizing scream sounds out from the darkness, punctuating the brutality of the memory.
An oppressive atmosphere lingers over the scene as the weight of the past settles back into the present.
Coulthard curses under his breath for recalling such a useless memory, thinking of Aubrey Sandalwood and the hard truth she is about to face.
He looks toward her, warning her that the path to becoming a lady is far from being a bed of roses.
Aubrey turns her back on him, resolving to make sure she never has to cross paths with the man ever again.
She pauses for a brief moment, her profile illuminated by a soft light as she prepares to leave.
Aubrey clutches her face in distress, her cheeks flushed as she stands amidst the flowers, overwhelmed by the intensity of their confrontation.
A quick slide sounds as the door to the study is opened, revealing the grand hallway beyond.
Patrick leans against the doorframe with a stack of papers, casually asking Coulthard if they should get moving.
He lists the numerous tasks Coulthard has assigned him, from delivering letters to clearing out a cafe, while Coulthard continues to smoke.
Patrick questions the nature of Coulthard's relationship with Aubrey, wondering if things are moving in a romantic direction.
Patrick drops the playful tone and reminds his boss that he isn't in the mood to joke, given the massive amount of paperwork they must finish.
He complains loudly about the Blackstones demanding more money and the endless grievances from the local merchants.
Patrick insists they leave immediately after a quick cup of coffee, emphasizing the urgency of their schedule.
A heavy sigh sounds as the stress of his responsibilities finally begins to take a toll on Coulthard.
Coulthard sits slumped in his chair, the weight of the day's arguments and memories leaving him exhausted.
He orders Patrick to refuse any further negotiations with the Blackstones and to contact the Angela Day Troop instead.
Coulthard reviews a document with a sharp focus, instructing Patrick to find out the troop's rates and prepare an offer.
Chibi Patrick admires how cool his boss looks while working, only to be snapped out by a chibi Coulthard who asks if he wants to quit.
Patrick jokes about the impulse to quit he felt earlier, but Coulthard firmly tells him he'll never let him go, even noting it's in his will.
Patrick presents a sealed letter, explaining that the madam handed over several messages the moment they arrived at the estate.
A sharp glare sounds as Coulthard realizes the madam expects him to read and reply to every single one of her requests.
Chibi heads pop up as Patrick lists various social invitations, like the Royal Ball and a charity bazaar, all of which Coulthard flatly rejects.
Patrick mentions a yacht race, but Coulthard remains obstinate, repeating that he has no desire to attend any of these events.
A weary sigh sounds as Patrick accepts his fate, preparing to write back and decline all the invitations on his master's behalf.
Chibi Patrick imagines a potential fiancé for Coulthard, his head filled with confusion about his master's future.
He stands before the desk and asks Coulthard if he has any genuine intention of ever getting married. Coulthard tells him to get out, but Patrick insists he will assume they are attending the royal ball and notify Lady Emily.
A frustrated sigh sounds as Patrick leaves, warning his master to lay off the cigars so he doesn't die and leave him without a job.
A quick wave sounds as Patrick departs, sarcastically asking for a letter of recommendation in advance just in case the smoking kills him.
Patrick stops suddenly at the door, his expression turning serious as another thought crosses his mind. A sudden turn sounds as Patrick looks back, bringing up the subject of the woman Coulthard met earlier that day.
Aubrey appears in a radiant, flowery vision, her striking red hair and resolute gaze lingering in the atmosphere. Coulthard flashes a mocking smile, asking Patrick what exactly he is trying to imply with his line of questioning.
Patrick asks if Coulthard is truly aware of the dark truth surrounding Aubrey and the mystery of that island.
Coulthard leans forward with a sharp, knowing grin, declaring that uncovering those secrets is exactly what he intends to do.
Coulthard smirks while reflecting on how she refused to disappear as he requested, wondering what her next move will be from his grand desk. Patrick watches his master from a distance, questioning if he intends to continue their secret meetings and the risks of being discovered. Coulthard remains silent, his profile bathed in light as he contemplates the complex situation before him. He gazes out with sharp blue eyes, debating whether he should watch her progress or simply drive her away.
A sudden turn sounds as Aubrey looks back in surprise when her Aunt Barbara calls her name in the lavish hallway.
Barbara laughs with delight, presenting an invitation to the royal ball and wondering if a certain someone helped Aubrey receive it. She encourages Aubrey to see the invitation as a magnificent opportunity to finally make her mark on high society.
A decorative masquerade mask in black and blue sits elegantly amidst a sea of light blue flowers.
Aubrey looks down at the invitation, confused as to why the Duchess would invite her if she truly dislikes her as suspected. She studies the wax seal, resolving to find a suitable match and leave the estate before Coulthard and Emily wed.
A group of ladies gathers for tea, gossiping about a pair that recently caused a stir by running away together.
They express collective shock over a rumor about a noblewoman falling in love with a mere servant.
The women agree that such scandals are more common than one would think, despite their own sheltered upbringings.
One of the women notices Emily has been unusually quiet and asks if something is bothering her during the tea party. Emily smiles brightly, mentioning her excitement for the upcoming masquerade ball. The group asks if Count Levon is attending, and Emily proudly confirms he personally replied to her letter. A high-pitched, excited eek sounds as the ladies celebrate the news that the Count will be there to see Emily. A subtle, knowing smirk plays on Emily's lips as she enjoys the envy and attention of her peers. Narration reflects on the lucky woman destined to be by the side of the famous and powerful Coulthard Carnus. Emily places a hand over her heart with a confident smile, declaring that she is the one destined for him.
Another lady asks Emily if Aubrey Sandalwood will also be making an appearance at the ball this time.
A sudden flinch sounds as Emily's expression hardens at the mere mention of her cousin's name. The guests whisper about Aubrey's beauty and wonder if Emily intends to bring her along again. A sharp grit sounds as Emily recalls Aubrey's poor dancing and the embarrassment of her stepping on Lord Patrick's feet. Emily explains to the group that Duchess Carnus was actually the one who extended the invitation to Aubrey.
She claims the Duchess must be worried about her niece, formally describing Aubrey as her older cousin.
The ladies advise Emily to be cautious as they continue to enjoy their elaborate tea and desserts.
A vision of Aubrey laughing and surrounded by admiring noblemen appears, representing the social threat Emily fears.
Emily worries about which noble Aubrey might be targeting with her charms at the next event. The blonde woman warns Emily once more to be careful of her cousin's potential influence. A series of heavy stomps sound as Emily storms through the hallway, furious that an orphan would dare covet her man.
Aubrey is startled in her room, turning away from her book as she hears a sudden intrusion.
Another stomp sounds as Emily enters, demandingly asking Aubrey what she is doing while Aubrey looks on in confusion.
A quick whoosh sounds as Emily grabs Aubrey's shoulder, accusing her of playing dumb about the boys at the dinner party.
Emily brings up the secret walk Aubrey took in the garden with a man named Nicholas. Emily leans in aggressively, demanding to know if Aubrey likes Nicholas or if it is actually Coulthard she wants. Aubrey remains calm, stating she only feels affection for Nicholas because he has been genuinely kind to her. Emily presses her for the truth, while Aubrey firmly denies having even the slightest interest in Count Levon.
Emily laughs joyfully, her mood shifting instantly as she seems relieved and satisfied by Aubrey's confession.
A friendly wave sounds as Emily leaves, wishing Aubrey luck and suggesting she entice Nicholas to fall for her. Aubrey reflects on how unusually quiet the last few days had been before this sudden and intense confrontation. The scene transitions to the grand masquerade ball, illuminated by massive chandeliers and filled with elegantly dressed guests. Aubrey adjusts her mask, feeling nervous despite her practice due to the overwhelming size of the crowd.
Aunt Barbara tells Aubrey not to be nervous, urging her to relax and enjoy the festivities.
Barbara notes that the nature of a masquerade ball should allow for more relaxation and enjoyment. A quick nod sounds as Chibi Aubrey tries to reassure herself and follow her aunt's encouraging advice. A rough drag sounds as Barbara pulls Aubrey along, mentioning that the Duchess might have already arrived. Aubrey finds herself standing alone again, feeling small amidst the grand architecture and bustling ballroom. She observes a masked man flirting with a lady nearby, emphasizing her own isolation in the romantic atmosphere.
A sudden step sounds as a tall, masked man approaches Aubrey from behind, catching her completely off guard.
Patrick, wearing a white mask and formal suit, recognizes Aubrey immediately upon approaching her in the crowded ballroom. Chibi Aubrey glows with joy as Chibi Patrick offers her a friendly and reassuring greeting. Patrick explains that he wasn't entirely certain until he saw her from behind, confirming it is truly her once they are face to face. He offers a charming and warm smile, clearly delighted to have found her among the many guests. He notes that her presence at the ball suggests the Duchess has finally made a firm decision regarding her future. Patrick stands beside Aubrey, casually observing the other guests as they talk amidst the grand architecture of the hall.
Aubrey visualizes Coulthard and Emily together, reflecting on the persistent rumors regarding their delayed engagement and the Duchess's current plans.
She feels a wave of frustration, realizing that she cannot seem to escape hearing about Coulthard no matter where she goes. Patrick extends his hand toward Aubrey with a polite gesture, inviting her to step forward with him toward the center of the room. He formally asks if he may have the honor of leading her toward the dance hall to join the festivities.
Aubrey looks at him with a gentle smile, appearing to consider his offer while maintaining her composed and elegant demeanor.
She accepts his invitation with a polite confirmation, placing her gloved hand into his larger palm.
Aubrey marvels at the sheer luxury of the royal party, noting the various high-end amenities like the card and smoking rooms.
Patrick leans down slightly, his expression cheerful as he continues to engage her in conversation while they walk together.
Aubrey observes that several other couples have already taken to the floor, surprised by how quickly the dancing has begun.
When Patrick suggests they join the others on the dance floor, Aubrey reacts with a startled and questioning look.
A formal bow sounds as Patrick lowers his head, making a grand and playful request for her to be his partner. He gazes up at her with an encouraging and soft look, waiting patiently for her to overcome her sudden hesitation.
Aubrey stares at him, her eyes wide with a mix of surprise and the weight of the moment as she stands before him.
She worries that if she misses this specific opportunity out of foolishness, she might regret it for the rest of her life.
Aubrey concludes that she will continue to live a miserable life unless she takes a chance, tightening her grip on his hand.
The scene shifts to Coulthard's office, where his assistant with glasses looks stressed while reviewing a thick stock of documents.
A weary sigh sounds as the chibi assistant feels buried under the never-ending mountain of paperwork requiring her attention. She looks over at her boss, who remains focused on his own set of papers while the office remains quiet.
Coulthard suddenly announces his departure, prompting a shocked assistant to ask where exactly he is headed in such a hurry.
He stands tall in an incredibly ornate and formal suit, prompting his assistant to question why he is dressed so extravagantly just to step out.
A surprised gasp sounds as Coulthard reminds her that she is the primary reason he is obligated to attend this messy party.
Heavy steps sound as Coulthard walks away, expressing his disdain for the masked nobles he considers to be acting like fools. The assistant warns him to be careful with his words, but Coulthard dismisses her concerns, indifferent to who might hear him.
Coulthard arrives at the venue, spotting a man and woman in the distance as he prepares to enter the main area. A stern man in a mask tells Coulthard he is late, his posture indicating a position of authority and expectation.
Coulthard looks to the side with a cold and detached expression, clearly uninterested in the social expectations of the night. His assistant politely wishes him a pleasant night, though her expression remains somewhat worried about his arrival.
A quick wave sounds as Coulthard signals his departure from her side, leaving the assistant bewildered by his brief exit.
She suspects there must be a specific reason for his recent hard work, watching him closely as he enters the crowd. The assistant secretly hopes that he manages to avoid running into a certain woman tonight to prevent any further trouble. The grand masquerade ball continues in full swing, with massive chandeliers lighting up the opulent and bustling hall.
Tired panting sounds as Aubrey catches her breath, realizing that the physical exertion of dancing is much more draining than she anticipated.
She scans the room, fully expecting that Coulthard will eventually make an appearance at such a significant royal event.
Sharp clicks and clocks sound as Aubrey walks through the hallway, deciding to seek some quiet rest in the lounge area.
A light giggle sounds as a guest praises the Duke and Duchess Carnus for their wonderful and striking appearance at the party.
When someone asks about the Count's whereabouts, they are told he is away handling a quick business matter.
A soft kiss sounds as Aubrey accidentally witnesses a man and woman sharing a secret moment behind the heavy curtains. A playful giggle sounds as Aubrey realizes the man is her uncle Jeffrick, leaving her completely stunned by the scandalous sight.
The woman playfully scolds Jeffrick for being unfair, especially since he brought his own wife to the same event.
Quick steps sound as Aubrey retreats in horror, unable to believe the betrayal she just witnessed in the shadows.
Low mumbling sounds as she tries to convince herself she must be mistaken, hurrying away from the area to escape the situation.
A sudden bump sounds as Aubrey accidentally crashes into a tall, broad-chested man while lost in her panicked thoughts. Coulthard stands before her, looking down with a steady gaze and asking if she is all right after her sudden impact.
Aubrey freezes in utter shock, her breath hitching as she looks up and realizes she has run directly into the man she was trying to avoid. Aubrey wonders if her mask hides her identity from Coulthard as she explains she was just seeking fresh air before trying to bid him a hasty farewell, but her path is suddenly blocked as a sharp raise sounds.
Coulthard offers a knowing and sharp smirk. Recognizing that a refusal would only invite unwanted suspicion, Aubrey reluctantly agrees to accompany him. The pair walks in silence down the long, ornately carpeted hallway of the palace.
Upon arriving at their destination, Coldheart signals they have reached the spot, prompting a quiet word of thanks from Aubrey. A soft creak sounds as Aubrey reaches for the door, bitterly questioning if Coldheart's kindness is extended to everyone except for her.
She is suddenly distracted by the sound of muffled voices coming from within the room. Nicholas asks Lord Patrick if he truly harbors any romantic feelings for Aubrey, catching her completely off guard as she listens from the hallway. Aubrey freezes as a sharp stop sounds, hearing Nicholas dismissively reject the idea of being interested in her.
Nicholas laughs mockingly, asserting that only a fool or a madman would ever consider her a romantic prospect. He stands with his arms folded, appearing entirely indifferent to the woman they are discussing.
A cruel smile plays across his lips. He clarifies that any attention he has shown her was born purely out of a sense of pity. Coldheart gazes at Aubrey with a cold, unrelenting expression, confirming that he is also only being decent to her because he feels bad for her. He leans in close to the trembling Aubrey, taunting her with the claim that this lowly opinion is what every noble truly holds of her. Meeting her eyes with a frigid glare, he addresses her by her full name and tells her it is finally time to wake up and face the harsh reality of her situation. They stand facing one another in the dimly lit corner of the grand hall.
Aubrey glares at him with rising anger, prompting him to mockingly ask why she is looking at her supposed savior with such hostility. She scoffs at the idea of him being her savior, demandingly asking why he is intent on tormenting her this way.
Her hand clenches her gown tightly as a sharp clench sounds, while Coldheart insists his actions are meant to prevent her from entertaining any delusions. Aubrey questions if he thinks she is simply trying to survive in this high society environment.
She wonders if he hates the sight of her that much, to which he replies that her refusal to leave when warned is the cause of her current misery.
Aubrey insists she never intended to stay and offers to give him exactly what he wants if he will just let her go.
A sudden flinch sounds as her hand jerks away in a moment of intense emotional distress. She fixes him with a look of pure and unadulterated resentment. Coldheart asks why she is glaring at him, coldly reminding her that she is the one responsible for her own misfortunes. Aubrey asks why he is going to such extreme lengths to hurt her instead of just ignoring her presence entirely. A quick point sounds as she gestures toward the exit. She suggests that he could just feel sorry for her and leave her in peace.
A low scowl sounds as Coldheart's expression darkens, and he flatly states that he feels no pity for her whatsoever.
He emphasizes that he has never once felt a single shred of sympathy for her or her plight.
Perplexed and hurt, Aubrey asks why he ever bothered to help her if his actions weren't motivated by pity.
Coldheart looks down at her, stating that he only intervened because she had begged him to save her.
Aubrey stands in stunned silence, her spirit crushed by his coldness.
She realizes with a heavy heart that the moment she thought was a turning point was utterly insignificant to the man standing before her.
Their tense confrontation is broken when Nicholas suddenly appears, calling out Aubrey's name in surprise.
Nicholas approaches with a friendly smile, expressing his relief at finally finding her in the mask-filled crowd.
He politely asks if he is interrupting their talk, but Coldheart dismisses the notion with a curt denial. Nicholas requests a moment to speak with Aubrey, prompting Coldheart to cast a final, sharp glance in her direction. Aubrey keeps her head bowed, refusing to meet the eyes of either man as the weight of their earlier words sinks in.
Coldheart grants his permission with a lingering and arrogant smile.
As heavy steps sound from Coldheart walking away, Nicholas asks Aubrey where she's been hiding throughout the evening. Aubrey explains she needed some air because the room felt stifling, but she is quick to decline Nicholas's invitation for a stroll.
Nicholas looks surprised by her sudden and firm rejection of his company.
Addressing him formally, Aubrey apologizes and insists that she simply wishes to be left alone. Sharp clicks and clacks sound as Aubrey walks away, leaving a bewildered Nicholas standing alone in the doorway.
A sudden grab sounds as Aubrey clutches her face, struggling to hold back the tears that threaten to fall.
Her eyes well up behind her mask as the cruelty of the night finally breaks her composure. Her discarded mask lies forgotten on the stone floor as she realizes she no longer wants to be part of this world. A quick dash sounds as Aubrey flees through the palace corridors, desperate to escape the judgment and pity of the nobles.
Coldheart's piercing blue eyes remain fixed ahead with intensity.
The brown-haired maid stands before the red-haired Aubrey in the library.
A soft observation sounds as the maid thinks that Aubrey is the same as ever,
narrating that Lady Aubrey has remained holed up in the library for days since the ball. A small cry of frustration sounds as the chibi maid struggles with Aubrey's silence.
The maid suggests a stroll in the garden to help Aubrey feel better.
A soft turn sounds as Aubrey looks away, stating she isn't in the mood.
The maid encourages her by mentioning how much Boris would love to see her.
A hesitant pause sounds as Aubrey considers the maid's persistent request. A bright smile appears on the maid's face.
An energetic declaration announces it is time to get ready.
Aubrey notes how long it has been since she stepped outside.
Remembering her Uncle Jeffrick at the ball causes Aubrey's head to throb with pain.
Aubrey remains uncertain about what to do regarding Master Nicholas.
A sudden call sounds, startling Aubrey as someone shouts her name.
A quick dash sounds as a man hurries toward Aubrey and her maid.
Nicholas appears before her with an expression of deep concern.
Nicholas worries she was sick since she didn't respond to his letter, while she insists she is fine.
Aubrey looks down, her expression full of silent melancholy. Nicholas watches her with a troubled and unsure gaze.
A surprised gasp sounds as the maid reacts with excitement.
A swift whoosh sounds as the maid rushes off to prepare tea for them.
A thick silence sounds as the pair stands awkwardly amid a flurry of questions.
A weary sigh sounds as Aubrey admits she didn't want to see Nicholas.
The two sit together in the quiet shade of the garden gazebo. An uncomfortable silence hangs between them as they sit across from one another. A soft scratch sounds as Nicholas confesses that something has been bothering him. A hesitant breath sounds as Nicholas struggles to find the right words.
Nicholas recalls their encounter at the masquerade and asks if she overheard the conversation inside.
A soft rustle sounds as Aubrey tensely clutches her shawl to her chest.
Nicholas admits he understands why she might have gotten the wrong idea from his behavior.
Nicholas earnestly pleads with Aubrey to listen to his explanation. Nicholas explains that noblemen often gossip and he didn't want them to be the subject of it. He confesses that he ended up saying harsh things to avoid unwanted attention. Nicholas admits that despite his excuses, his behavior toward her was wrong.
He looks at her with a pained expression, admitting he has thought of her feelings.
Nicholas looks at her with hope and asks if she can forgive him.
Aubrey silently concludes that his long explanation doesn't change his selfish motivation.
Aubrey decides she must swallow her pride and marry a decent man for stability.
Nicholas looks down, admitting he would be lying if he said he wasn't hurt.
A quick glance sounds as Nicholas looks toward her with a nervous eye. Aubrey offers him a bright and seemingly forgiving smile. Aubrey thinks that despite his flaws, Nicholas is still better than Coalhark. A stately carriage arrives at the entrance of the grand estate.
A pained groan sounds as Coalhark clutches his head, suffering from a lack of sleep.
The assistant suggests a medical exam, while Coalhard asks for sleeping aids.
Heavy steps sound as Coalhard walks toward the entrance of the building.
A low scowl sounds as Coalhard spots Aubrey in the distance.
A friendly pat sounds as a hand is placed on Coalhard's shoulder.
Nicholas asks if Coalhard noticed his carriage, while Coalhard remains cold and silent.
A creak sounds as the door shuts, leaving the black-haired man alone to stew in his resentment over Aubrey's perceived arrogance.
Patrick mentions that Nicholas has seemed depressed lately, speculating that he must have failed in some romantic pursuit.
A sigh sounds as Coalhard reflects on the superficial curiosity other men show Aubrey, realizing she is the only one who doesn't see through it.
A cheerful voice calls out to Patrick and Coalhard as they are joined by Nicholas in the luxurious hall.
Nicholas approaches his friends with a bright and joyful smile.
Patrick asks if something good happened, to which Nicholas enthusiastically confirms that it has.
A small chuckle sounds as Coalhard watches Nicholas, thinking it is impossible for him to have moved on so quickly after being so upset yesterday.
Nicholas mentions that he went to the Levent estate yesterday, which only fuels Coalhard's private dismissal of the situation.
A sigh sounds as Nicholas admits that Aubrey had indeed overheard his harsh words, confirming his suspicions.
A surprised huh sounds as Patrick questions if Nicholas actually apologized to her.
Nicholas explains that he apologized because his behavior was wrong and he felt bad about hurting the lady's feelings. Nicholas asks if Aubrey accepted the apology while Coalhard looks on with a silent, calculating gaze. Coalhard internally scoffs at the idea, convinced that she isn't the type to forgive and likely told Nicholas she never wants to see him again.
A smirk appears on Coalhard's face. Coalhard's eyes widen in shock as he hears that she actually accepted the apology.
Nicholas stands with his back to Coalhard, mentioning that she still seemed a bit hurt by the whole ordeal.
Coalhard is dumbfounded that she would be grateful for an apology from a man who openly admitted he only felt pity for her.
He recalls the image of the red-haired Aubrey looking fearful and angry, finding her recent actions completely baffling. He wonders what her face looked like when she accepted the apology. He imagines Aubrey wearing a soft and genuine smile. Coalhard stands in a dark, swirling void of thought, realizing with a start that he has never actually seen her smile before.
A clip and clop sound as a carriage travels down the street past a grand brick building.
Inside the carriage, Coalhard reflects on how Aubrey is chasing the same upper-class dreams he once had, believing she can succeed by simply acting the part.
He views her actions as foolish as he meets with his gray-haired assistant who is carrying a stack of papers.
The assistant mentions that they need to hurry and find a playwright for their upcoming project.
A series of blinks sound as the chibi assistant realizes Coalhard is completely zoned out and hasn't heard a word she said.
The assistant repeats that a playwright is needed for the main performance to be staged at Cannon Hall.
A sigh sounds as she clarifies they need a brand new play written specifically for the opening ceremony. A mutter sounds as Coulthard ponders the search while the assistant notes there are no good candidates nearby and asks if they should expand their search area.
Coulthard remembers something Nicholas mentioned earlier in the lounge.
Nicholas had talked about gifting some books to Aubrey. Nicholas had noted that she is quite a bookworm and has recently taken up writing as a hobby.
An image of Aubrey appears, peacefully writing in a notebook with a quill pen amidst a floral backdrop.
The thought bubble suggests she has the potential to become a truly great writer.
A smirk sounds as Coulthard tells the assistant to have Alanam stop his search for now.
Coulthard decides not to send the man elsewhere, looking at a framed picture of himself as he formulates a plan.
The scene shifts to the bright and opulent interior of the Levents' drawing room.
Coulthard bows politely to the Countess and her daughter, asking for their forgiveness for his sudden visit.
The brown-haired Countess welcomes him warmly, telling him he is always welcome and no apology is needed.
A purple gift box is presented on the table, prompting the blonde Emily to ask what it is.
An open sound occurs as they discover the box is full of tea jars, prompting the two women to gasp in delight as Coulthard explains the gift. Emily looks at him with admiration, thinking about his refined taste.
Coulthard sits across from them, asking if they enjoy the gift while they praise his success and impeccable style.
Ahaha sounds as Coulthard modestly brushes off their compliments about his thriving business. The Countess mentions that many people are looking forward to the completion of Cannon Hall.
Emily is surprised to hear about their resident theater planned for the building. Emily asks if they will be able to watch plays he produced, and he confirms they will eventually be staged.
A double shake sounds as he admits he only has ideas and lacks the talent to turn them into full stories.
Emily tilts her head, looking a bit confused by his admission.
Coulthard reveals he heard Aubrey has read every book in the library and started writing, causing Emily to wonder how he knows so much.
A clench sounds as Aubrey's hand tightens on her dress while she explains that Nicholas Ayrton was the one who told her.
Coulthard notes that Nicholas couldn't stop praising her work, concluding that Aubrey is the perfect person to turn his ideas into a fantastic story.
The Countess thanks Count Levon for thinking so highly of Aubrey while he offers a polite smile.
Emily asks her mother what she is about to say as they walk through the manor.
The Countess worries that despite Aubrey's talent, she might not be in a position to help with a business project.
The Countess explains that professional plays are a business people pay for, doubting an amateur's contribution. Coulthard insists he needs Aubrey precisely because she is an amateur. He explains that professionals are blinded by money, whereas they need fresh, novel ideas rather than stories written for a quick buck. Coulthard declares he won't put on ordinary plays at Cannon Hall, believing Aubrey is the perfect fit.
Coulthard assures the Countess that the arrangement won't take long.
The Countess internally notes she already planned for Coulthard and Emily to be engaged.
She reflects that Coulthard has never shown interest in marrying Emily.
The Countess decides she must ask Aubrey for her thoughts before giving a final answer.
Coulthard promises his full support if Aubrey accepts his offer.
The Countess realizes this support could solve the problem of Jeffrick wanting Aubrey out of the house.
A smirk sounds as the Countess appreciates the offer, but insists on speaking with Aubrey first.
Coulthard agrees to abide by their decision, but hides a calculating gaze.
He privately thinks the Countess will have no choice but to accept his offer.
A rejection sounds as Aubrey's voice rings out in the quiet drawing room. The Countess asks why, while Aubrey suspiciously wonders why the man who threatened her now wants to hire her. Aubrey insists she lacks talent and is merely a book lover with poor writing skills.
Aubrey fears that attempting to write the play would only cause trouble for everyone.
Aubrey suggests finding a professional to help Count Levon instead of her.
A soft reach sounds as a hand is offered in comfort. The Countess asks Aubrey to give the matter some more thought. Aubrey hesitates, addressing the woman as Aunt Barbara. Aunt Barbara gently reminds Aubrey that she cannot stay forever and must think about her independence. Emily expresses her excitement about the magnificence of the upcoming Cannon Hall. Emily complains to a friend, questioning why he would ask a charity case instead of her. Emily scoffs at the idea of a lady locking herself away to write, unaware of Coulthard's deeper intentions. Emily believes no man is as reliable and dignified as Coulthard Carnus. She reflects on how much he has grown since his humble beginnings. She recalls the grand banquet thrown when Duke Carnus acknowledged Coulthard as his son and gave him a title. Emily remembers herself at the banquet, looking elegant in a red dress. A hand sounds as she recalls a pivotal moment from her youth. Emily's eyes widen as she remembers the young man who first caught her attention. A young, brown-haired boy offers a handkerchief to a young Emily.
A smirk sounds as Emily prides herself on being the first to see his potential when he had nothing.
Emily believes she's the only one who can fix the flaw of Coulthard never truly being a noble despite his success. A click sounds as Emily walks, pleased that Coulthard has finally made a move.
Emily views Aubrey's involvement as a mere complication in the natural marriage of two families.
The Countess confirms they are discussing Count Levon's request.
A shake sounds as the Countess reveals she told him Aubrey cannot do it, shocking Emily.
A whoosh sounds as Emily storms away, outraged that an orphan would refuse such an honor.
Stomp sounds echo as Emily fumes over how this might damage their family's relationship with Coulthard. A stomp and grab sound as Emily interrupts Aubrey in the garden, snatching her whist.
Emily shouts at Aubrey, demanding to know what her problem is.
Aubrey is confused by the outburst, while Emily asks if she seriously doesn't know the significance of the offer.
Emily demands to know who Aubrey thinks she is to say out.
Emily screams at Aubrey to get a grip, calling her daft for turning down the Count's offer.
Narrative bubbles inform Emily that Aubrey is currently unwell.
Blonde Emily demands to know whose side the gray-haired man is on.
A quick slide sounding as the red-haired Aubrey pulls her arm away from the blonde's grip.
The gray-haired man tells Emily there is no need to be so angry.
Emily questions how she couldn't be angry while Aubrey declares she will do it.
Aubrey confirms that she has changed her mind and will accept the offer. Aubrey turns to Emily and tells her to stop being so angry. The blonde woman's eye narrows in a silent fury. Emily sneers as she tells Aubrey to remember her place and do the job properly.
Aubrey prepares to meet with Count Levon, asking him to consider another path.
Aubrey stands outside a grand gate, reflecting on her promise to do whatever Coulthard wanted.
A creak sounds as Aubrey approaches a carriage, determined to end the ordeal by fulfilling his wishes.
An open sound follows as Count Levon's secretary, Lemon Manhwa, introduces himself to Aubrey.
Aubrey asks where they are headed as they travel to the Count's townhouse.
Lemon explains that the residence is located right in front of the plaza fountain.
Aubrey stares out the window with a look of quiet contemplation.
The secretary watches Aubrey with a look of mild concern. The carriage arrives at the entrance of a massive white estate.
Aubrey greets Count Levon in the drawing room before he curtly tells her to sit. Aubrey expresses her gratitude for the opportunity and hopes her amateur skills will be useful.
Coulthard leans forward and asks Aubrey if she is feeling ill.
Coulthard notes her awful appearance, while Aubrey admits she hasn't been able to sleep.
A glare sounds as Aubrey wonders if he truly doesn't know the cause of her exhaustion.
Aubrey opens her notebook and asks to pose a question before they begin.
Aubrey asks if the play idea he has involves the island from her past.
She waits for his answer with a tense expression.
The dark-haired man stares back at her in silence.
A shake sounds as Aubrey's hand tightens on her dress, suspecting he was holding back.
Coulthard asks if she views him as someone profiting off her story, questioning if she thinks he is wrong.
Aubrey reiterates her lack of interest in his past, while Coulthard asked for her ideas. Coulthard asks if Nicholas is the reason she can't sleep, prompting Aubrey's confusion.
A weary sigh sounds as Aubrey closes her eyes.
Aubrey reveals she has been having nightmares and agrees to explain them to the Count.
Coulthard's blue eyes sharpen with sudden intensity.
A flinch sounds as Aubrey admits that he has appeared in her dreams several times.
Aubrey describes how he repeatedly revealed her secret in her nightmares.
She recalls the dream of him mocking her past on the slave island and calling her life doomed.
Aubrey reflects on how her first night of nightmares felt terrifyingly real.
Aubrey describes the fear and physical pain she endured to try and stay awake.
Aubrey explains she pushes her body to reach a deep sleep specifically to avoid meeting him in her dreams.
Aubrey smiles as she reveals she gained something from the constant confrontation.
Her green eyes are filled with a new sense of resolve. Aubrey declares she is no longer afraid and suggests they work together.
Aubrey urges him to hurry as she has promised to do what he wanted.
Coulthard asks her to tell him the idea she has been thinking of.
Coulthard asks when she promised to do what he wanted, leaving Aubrey stunned.
Coulthard asks if she thinks this project is truly what he wanted from her.
Aubrey realizes she has made a massive error in judgment. She wonders if she jumped to conclusions without him ever saying a word.
Coulthard clarifies that he would never ask for something so trivial in return, leaving Aubrey baffled.
Coulthard reveals his true motive was just to get Aubrey to his estate, making her realize the playwright job was a lie as she slumps in shock. A clench sounds as Aubrey's hands tighten on her dress while Coulthard tells her she can write whatever she likes and he will judge it. Coulthard sits back, explaining he simply wanted to talk and had a question for her as she asks why he went to such extreme lengths.
Aubrey shouts in outrage, asking if he truly orchestrated this entire deception just for a conversation. Aubrey demands to know if he understands how much she agonized over his ridiculous proposal while he watches her with a cold gaze. A shake sounds as Aubrey's head trembles while she asks him what it is he is so desperately curious about.
Aubrey gestures to her open notebook, asking what he wants to know badly enough to deceive her and go to such trouble.
Aubrey sits stiffly as Coulthard's hand reaches out, asking if she truly thinks she will ever fit in with the upper class.
Aubrey insists she genuinely believes she can fit in, provided he finally stops torturing her.
Coulthard tells Aubrey that any kindness shown to her is only out of pity, asserting that her failure is inevitable.
Coldheart confirms his absolute certainty with a cold smile.
Coldheart admits that looking at Aubrey fills him with disgust because she mirrors his own past mistakes.
Narrative text reveals that his mother was beaten to death while foolishly trying to steal food to feed him. A young, dark-haired boy huddles in despair until a man appears before him like a savior.
The young boy learns the life-changing fact that he is the illegitimate child of Duke Carnus.
A large hand grasps the child's small hand as he reflects on his father's nobility and the heavens making up for his loss.
The young Coldheart stands proudly in noble attire, recalling how his only goal as a child was to fit into the family.
A fork stabs into a bloody steak as Coldheart recalls staying devoted to his parents and imitating his older brother Peterson.
The young boy forces a smile, reminding himself that nobles didn't cry regardless of how hard things got.
Coldheart reflects on his belief that perseverance would make his dream come true, but the scene shifts to his adult self bound on the floor.
Coldheart describes waking up in strange places with things tied around his wrists and ankles, leaving painful red marks.
A bearded man treats the young master's hands, noting he must be in a lot of pain.
The man offers a comforting hug, promising the crying boy that everything will eventually be okay.
Coldheart reflects that the people who were good to him were all kicked out of the house for showing him kindness. Coldheart bites down on a cigar, telling Aubrey that it sickens him to even look at her.
Coldheart explains that she reminds him of himself and how naively he failed to see reality. Coldheart warns Aubrey to leave before she gets herself hurt, as the outcome of her struggle is obvious.
A flinch sounds as Coldheart's blue eyes sharpen with sudden intensity.
Aubrey argues that while he thinks the future is obvious, it is certainly not obvious for her. Aubrey stares Coldheart down with resolve, declaring that she is not him.
A stand sounds as Aubrey rises, demanding that he finally leave her alone. A stop sound follows as a hand reaches for the door handle while Coldheart warns her she will regret this decision.
Aubrey turns back to tell him she is leaving since there was never a job and hopes she never sees him again.
Narrative bubbles state that he won't be the only one who knows her secret for much longer.
A slam and stomp sound as Aubrey storms down the hallway, deciding to come clean to Aunt Barbara to end his threats. Aubrey walks away with a firm belief that Aunt Barbara will understand her past.
A carriage travels down a cobblestone city street several hours later.
Lemon Monwid asks Coldheart if he is certain they had a productive conversation. Lemon notes Aubrey claimed everything was wrapped up nicely before leaving, while Coldheart sits in the carriage with his arms crossed.
Aubrey's voice echoes in the background as a memory, repeating that she is not Coldheart Carnus.
Coldheart reflects that she isn't cutting her own flesh at night, but she is an escaped slave.
Coldheart clenches his scarred hand, telling himself that Aubrey's life is none of his business. The scene shifts back to the ornate exterior of a grand noble manor.
A black-haired woman in a dark dress tells someone they never cease to amaze her.
She notes he's been so quiet because he's been plotting something utterly ridiculous. The woman questions Coldheart, asking how he could let a common girl write a play. A sigh sounds as Coldheart tells her the ridiculous plot is over and there is no need to be angry. A glare sounds as the woman scoffs that birds of a feather flock together and blood cannot be fooled. A press sound follows as the woman pokes Coldheart's chest, demanding he get his act together regardless of his actions in Lavard. The woman declares that the focus must now be on that half-wit lady, Emily Levent.
The dark-haired woman warns Coldheart about ruining her reputation again and rejects the engagement.
Coldheart notes he even attends social functions for the woman's favorite, Peterson.
A sudden, sharp slap sounds as the woman strikes Coldheart across the face.
A red mark blooms on Coldheart's cheek as he stares in cold silence.
Coldheart mockingly notes how she has aged as he catches her hand, causing her to flinch. The two stand in a tense, silent confrontation in the dim hall. The woman calls him a bastard and regrets bringing him home, while he scoffs at her logic.
Coldheart tells her she is weak-hearted and that things should have ended long ago as he raises her hand.
Coldheart reflects that he would have simply left himself to drown if the roles were reversed. A decorative title card introduces the next chapter of Aubrey's story.
Aubrey thinks of Aunt Barbara as a comforting, warm presence.
She imagines Aunt Barbara's voice would be both elegant and gentle.
Aubrey wonders if such a kind person could truly understand her dark secret.
Aubrey reflects that being a slave was never her choice.
She hopes that if she explains everything, the older woman will offer comfort and acceptance.
In reality, Aubrey stands in the garden, gathering her courage to speak.
Aubrey asks Aunt Barbara if she has ever heard of Chrysof Island.
Aunt Barbara is visibly shocked and asks how Aubrey could possibly know about that place.
Aubrey prepares to tell her the truth about her past.
Aunt Barbara assumes Aubrey has merely heard rumors about the island.
A heavy dun sounds as the older woman describes it as a horrific place full of slaves.
Aunt Barbara expresses her fear that escaped slaves might bring disease into the household. Aubrey sits in stunned silence, realizing her hope was misplaced.
Aubrey flinches as Aunt Barbara calls her name, breaking the heavy silence.
Aunt Barbara tries to comfort her, assuming she is merely worried about the slaves.
Aunt Barbara assures her that those people will never set foot in their home.
Aubrey's world darkens as the weight of the rejection sinks in. A sharp clench sounds as Aubrey realizes she will never be accepted here.
A stand sounds as Aubrey rises, announcing she must leave immediately.
Aunt Barbara calls out in confusion as Aubrey turns to walk away.
The older woman smiles warmly, completely unaware of the pain she has caused.
Aubrey bitterly wonders if the woman would still feel that way if she knew the truth.
Aubrey's hand reaches for the door handle as she retreats. Aubrey thinks to herself that she finally understands the reality of her situation.
She recalls Coulthard's harsh words and realizes he was right all along.
Aubrey stands alone in the garden, certain that no place will ever truly accept her.
Tears fall as Aubrey admits she was sorely mistaken about finding a home.
A quiet shut sounds as Aubrey decides it is better to leave on her own terms.
A soft slide sounds as Aubrey sits down in her room to take final action.
A scribble sounds as Aubrey writes a letter, trying to convince herself it is the right thing to do.
Aubrey assumes no one will even notice if she disappears.
A creak sounds as Aubrey walks out of the estate gate, carrying a single suitcase. She pauses one last time to look back at the grand manor she is leaving behind.
A turn sounds as Aubrey shifts her gaze forward, determined not to look back again.
The red-haired girl walks away into the night, a lone figure in the vast white space.
A low rumble sounds as the sky turns dark and foreboding.
A steady drip sounds as the rain begins to fall on the city streets.
The manor's windows glow warmly despite the cold, pouring rain outside.
Lemon tells Coulthard they must depart, and Coulthard acknowledges her.
Lemon expresses concern over Coulthard's grueling schedule and lack of rest. Coulthard explains his chronic lack of sleep while looking visibly exhausted.
A stand sounds as Coulthard rises to instruct Lemon to process a specific list without changes.
The heavy rain pours as Lemon complains about the timing of their travel, prompting Coulthard to tell him to be quiet.
Inside the moving carriage, Lemon brings up the theater troupe contract while Coulthard stares out the window.
Coulthard's sharp blue eye narrows with sudden focus.
Through the rain, Coulthard spots a lone girl walking with a suitcase.
Coulthard commands Lemon to halt the carriage, catching the older man off guard. A creak sounds as the carriage stops abruptly after Coulthard's urgent show.
A wet step sounds as Coulthard exits the carriage into the downpour.
Another steady step sounds as a dark umbrella is held over the walking girl.
Coulthard demands to know where she is going in such weather.
Aubrey stares back in exhausted silence as the rain falls around them.
Coulthard repeats his question about her presence without an umbrella while she reflects on how his presence used to intimidate her.
Aubrey's internal monologue continues, recalling her past tendency to stammer.
Aubrey realizes that without a secret to hide, she no longer fears the man standing before her.
Coulthard remains persistent, asking again about her destination.
A flinch sounds as Aubrey tells him she is simply following his previous orders to leave.
Aubrey asks if he is finally happy now that she is departing.
The red-haired girl asserts that he has successfully achieved his goal. Coulthard tells her to wait, but Aubrey demands that he get out of her way.
A smack sounds as Aubrey violently knocks his hand away and demands to be released.
Aubrey screams in frustration, declaring her departure is exactly what he wanted.
Coulthard addresses her by name as she shouts that his words about reality finally sank in, making her realize her own delusions.
A heavy pant sounds from Aubrey as she begs him to let her bow.
A stagger sounds as Aubrey loses her footing, prompting a panicked Coulthard to catch her.
A grit sounds as Aubrey tells him not to touch her through clenched teeth.
Aubrey weakly admits she regrets asking for his help in the past.
Aubrey's dark thoughts drift toward a wish for death over her current pain.
A heavy thud sounds as Aubrey collapses onto the wet pavement beside her umbrella.
Lemon rushes over to the scene, calling out to his master in alarm. Lemon wonders what could have been said to leave Coulthard looking so utterly stunned.
Lemon kneels beside the unconscious girl, desperately trying to wake her.
A feverish pant sounds as Lemon realizes she has a dangerously high temperature.
Coulthard commands Lemon to the bed of the wear.
A toss sounds as Coulthard discards the umbrella to lift Aubrey into his arms.
When Lemon suggests a hospital, Coulthard firmly rejects the idea.
Coulthard orders a return to the townhouse as the grand building looms in the rain.
Aubrey lies unconscious in a large bed while Lemon and a bearded man watch over her.
An ache and blink sound as Aubrey wakes up with a throbbing head.
Aubrey looks up to see the two men standing by her bedside.
A whoosh sounds as Aubrey recoils in confusion, asking who they are while Lemon tries to calm her.
Lemon asks if she remembers the previous night, and she recalls her encounter with Coulthard.
Lemon introduces the Dr. Ben, who offers her medicine for her fever and body aches.
Aubrey is handed several pills and a glass of water.
A gulp sounds as Aubrey obediently swallows the medicine.
Lemon announces he will fetch Coulthard despite Aubrey's attempt to stop him.
A quiet shut sounds as the men leave, and Aubrey begins to recognize the room.
A slide sounds as Aubrey moves to put on her shoes, realizing she is indeed in Coulthard's townhouse.
A heavy stomp sounds from the hallway as someone approaches the bedroom door.
A sharp open sounds as Coulthard enters the room with a stern expression.
A heavy step sounds as Coulthard enters the room and asks how she is feeling.
Aubrey remains silent until he questions her reasons for fleeing into the night.
Aubrey expresses her intent to depart despite his insistence on her recovery.
A quiet sigh sounds as she reflects on the contradiction of his current concern.
A sharp flinch sounds when Coldheart asks about a bruise on her thigh.
Aubrey's realization dawns as she notices her clothes have been changed.
Coldheart clarifies a maid performed the task while Aubrey silently worries about her slave mark.
Coldheart presses for an explanation while she wonders why he avoids mentioning her secret.
The black-haired man asks if Count Levent was responsible for the physical harm.
A dry laugh sounds as Aubrey retorts that the injury is actually his own fault.
She describes how she harmed herself to stay awake and avoid him in her sleep.
A sudden whoosh sounds as Aubrey attempts to leave the row.
Coldheart demands she sit down, refusing to let her leave in her weak state.
Aubrey questions his interest in her destination and demands he stop blocking her path.
Coldheart warns her that the medication will soon render her unable to travel.
A heavy stagger sounds as Aubrey's strength begins to fail her.
Coldheart's blue eye narrows as he watches her struggle. The scene shifts as a voice asks what she dreams of doing after leaving the island.
Someone encourages her to imagine a future beyond their current imprisonment.
A pale hand reaches out toward the sparkling surface of the ocean.
A faint stagger sounds as the memory of her past struggles begins to surface.
In the present, Coldheart catches the red-haired girl before she can collapse.
A loud swish sounds as the waves crash against the rocky island shore.
A soft splash sounds while young Aubrey dismisses a friend's questions as pointless.
The other girl dreams of wearing fine dresses and owning a bakery.
A light laugh sounds as Aubrey questions the practicality of her friend's vision.
The brown-haired girl describes her desire to bake soft, cream-filled bread.
A rhythmic stomp sounds as they wash laundry together in the shallow water.
The girl, Phoebe, presses Aubrey to share her own secret hopes for the future.
Aubrey argues that imagination is useless since escape is impossible.
Phoebe insists that an opportunity for freedom might appear from above.
Aubrey recalls the horrific fate of those who tried to escape the cliffs.
A mocking huff sounds as Aubrey declares the island an inescapable hell.
Phoebe suggests they wait for visiting nobles to provide a chance encounter.
A weary sigh sounds as Aubrey doubts any noble would ever assist them.
Aubrey tells her friend she is crazy for suggesting they use seduction to escape.
A soft, pleasant sound accompanies Phoebe's vow to do anything to survive.
The brown-haired girl promises they will find a beautiful home together.
A happy giggle sounds as Aubrey agrees to help with the baking.
Aubrey jokes about her friend's math skills while they lock.
A gentle reach sounds as Phoebe offers her hand to lead the way.
Phoebe looks back with a hopeful and encouraging expression.
Aubrey's internal monologue confirms that the peaceful moment was merely a dream.
A soft rustle sounds as she sits up in the large, unfamiliar bed.
Aubrey gazes toward the window, her expression filled with quiet longing.
The scene overlooks a peaceful street filled with ordinary citizens.
Aubrey reflects on how desperately she craved this normal life.
She acknowledges that her escape was only possible because of Phoebe's sacrifice.
A tight clench sounds as she grabs the sheets in a moment of frustration.
Aubrey laments how she has wasted her hard-won freedom on trivial worries.
Narrative text reflects on nobles treading over the children who suffered. Coldheart pushes past his assistant as they prepare to leave.
Outside the door, Lemon and a maid discuss Aubrey's resting state.
Coldheart stands in the doorway with a stern, tired gaze.
Sitting up in bed, Aubrey looks physically and emotionally drained.
A step sounds as Coldheart approaches to ask why she is crying.
A flinch sounds when Aubrey mentions she had a bad dream. Hands clutch the sheets as she mentions the Countess is coming.
Coldheart questions her plan to flee to her mother Foamland.
He bluntly reveals her father's commoner status and her low birth. He warns that she will never be accepted in Hervaldi.
Turning away, Coldheart admits he lied to cover her tracks. A turn sounds as he tells her to maintain the deception.
Lemon grumbles about their schedule as they walk away.
A thought reflects on how her death would impact him.
Aubrey looks back as Lemon calls for his master.
A bite sounds as she clenches her lip in silence.
He reflects on his own journey, rising from nothing. He admits his personal ambitions often feel completely unrealistic.
His resolve to seize every opportunity remains unshakable.
A step sounds as the two men exit the hallway.
A dash sounds as Annie, the maid, stops them urgently.
A whisper sounds as she asks if he saw the scar.
Annie gestures to describe the branding mark on Aubrey's back.
Coldheart confirms that she hasn't told anyone else about it.
Lemon urges his master to drop the matter and proceed.
They walk toward the waiting carriage in the estate courtyard. Lemon asks his master to stop involving himself with her. He warns that his personal concerns are hindering his work. A rub sounds as Lemon begs him to actually distance himself.
A scoff sounds as Coldheart acknowledges the request.
He realizes his obsession goes beyond seeing his past self. Aubrey's face haunts him as he questions his own heart. He wonders what this maddening feeling truly is.
A dash sounds as Aunt Barbara rushes to Aubrey's side.
A grab sounds as she asks why she ran away.
A sob sounds as Barbara blames herself for Aubrey's pain. Aubrey apologizes while Count Levent watches them with crossed arms.
A tisk sounds as the Count urges them to leave.
Aubrey eventually returns to the Grand Levent family mansion.
For weeks, the curious maids constantly check her condition. The gardener mentions rumors that she has lost her mind.
Aubrey tearfully asks if he is upset with her actions.
A sob sounds as he quotes her emotional goodbye letter.
A wah sounds as she promises not to run again.
A sniffle sounds while the gardener offers his future support.
Aubrey smiles and vows to stay from now on.
A sob sounds as they reconcile their shared promise.
A sharp gaze shows her new, hardened resolve.
Aubrey vows to survive at all costs despite everything.
Aubrey resolves that knowledge is power and she must study to lay a solid foundation for her future. While in the garden, a voice mentions an upcoming ball on a ship, causing Aubrey to repeat the news in surprise. The extravagant Murfreo Hemberlot is described as a man of many rumors who spends more lavishly than anyone else.
Aubrey smiles as she remarks that the event sounds fun just hearing about it.
Aubrey admits she has no interest in attending, as such a place won't provide the answers she needs for her survival. A tisk sounds as Count Jeffrick expresses his distaste for the sorry-looking tavern.
A wave sounds as Murfreo calls out from the bar to get Jeffrick's attention.
A snicker sounds from Murfreo Hemberlot, the son of Duke Hemberlot, as he enjoys a cigar.
Jeffrick apologizes for his delay and asks how Duke Hemberlot has been lately.
Murfreo remarks that the Duke is unfortunately still as healthy as ever and will likely outlive him.
A ha-ha sounds as Jeffrick laughs at Murfreo's dark humor, noting he already has everything he needs without a title. A prattling sound accompanies the praise for Murfreo's business success, noting that even the royal family enjoys his wine.
Murfreo indicates he has something to ask, prompting Jeffrick to inquire what it is.
A stop sounds as Murfreo asks about the young lady Jeffrick is currently supporting.
Jeffrick describes Aubrey as his wife's niece, while Murfreo notes the rumors of her great beauty.
A smirk sounds as Murfreo asks for the young woman's name.
A thump sounds as Jeffrick realizes Murfreo's interest means he might be considering taking Aubrey as his third wife.
Jeffrick plots to send the girl who intruded on his life away to the Duke's estate to restore his peace.
A grin sounds as Murfreo expresses his desire to meet her and asks if Jeffrick understands his meaning.
Aunt Barbara asks Jeffrick about the nature of the document he is holding.
Jeffrick clarifies that the invitation to Lord Hemberlot's party is specifically intended for Aubrey.
Jeffrick explains that Murfreo personally wanted to invite Aubrey, leaving Barbara to wonder what he truly means.
Jeffrick assumes Murfreo heard of her and felt it right to invite her since she is under their patronage.
Barbara mentions that she has something to consult with Jeffrick regarding Aubrey's future. A turn sounds as Jeffrick reacts in total shock to the news that Aubrey wants to study.
Barbara supports the idea of Aubrey preparing for her future, but Jeffrick dismisses it as completely ridiculous.
Jeffrick is frustrated that she wants to start studying when she doesn't even know the basics. Barbara explains that Aubrey wants to begin her education now since she never had the opportunity before.
Jeffrick scoffs at the idea of getting her a tutor, asking if she expects to become a scholar immediately.
A slam sounds as Jeffrick insists they have already done more than enough for the girl.
Barbara looks distressed as she asks him to consider how their previous efforts turned out. Jeffrick shouts that Aubrey must have done something wrong to cause the recent disrespect to their family.
Barbara is taken aback when Jeffrick asks if she realizes how badly the girl is tarnishing their name. Jeffrick commands that Aubrey must forget about studying and instead focus on attending the ball.
Colehart stands outside a pub, demanding to know why construction on his wine bar hasn't started yet.
A hic sounds as a nervous man struggles to answer Colehart's demand to speak.
A hic sounds as the man reveals Master Hemberlot ordered a halt until negotiations were finished.
A tisk sounds as Colehart curses the name of Murfreo Hemberlot.
The worker explains the demand to move the bar's location, but Colehart states those talks are already over.
Colehart points out the impossibility of the request and says Murfreo can leave if he doesn't like the terms. A turn sounds as Colehart leaves, thinking that the man is truly hopeless and completely clueless.
Colehart instructs Lemon to stay behind as he prepares to depart.
Colehart states his intention is to go and catch the scammer.
A glare sounds as Lemon asks for the scammer's location, suggesting they wait for his arrival instead.
Colehart realizes that because it is August, he will find his target at the ship ball.
Barbara apologizes to Aubrey, explaining that her uncle became very angry at the request to study.
Aubrey assures her aunt that she is all right and that no apology is necessary.
Barbara promises to watch for a better time to talk, while Aubrey vows to keep thinking about her studies.
Aubrey reflects on how she already anticipated her uncle's immediate disapproval.
A hand sounds as Barbara passes a small envelope to the red-haired girl.
Aubrey holds a formal invitation as her aunt explains that a man who hosts a fantastic annual ball heard her story and sent it to her.
Looking at the elegant script, Aubrey wonders if this is the same event Boris mentioned previously. Aubrey expresses her gratitude for the gesture, but admits she doesn't wish to attend, feeling she doesn't belong in such a social scene. Aunt Barbara insists that participating in social events is an essential and unavoidable part of her new life. Aubrey envisions a life where she could have been a prominent lady in high society alongside others like Emily.
Her internal monologue reflects on the possibility that she might have even been married by this point.
While Aubrey has never met her father, she recognizes that if her mother hadn't chosen him, she wouldn't even exist. She considers that the noble Hervaldi family would never accept her, a fact she is certain her aunt realizes. Aubrey turns to her aunt and asks directly if she truly wants her to attend the party. A gentle pat sounds as Barbara strokes Aubrey's head, saying that while she supports her desire to study, she primarily hopes for her to find a wonderful partner.
Barbara urges her to be more realistic, causing Aubrey to look away with a pained expression as she tries to object.
Despite the underlying tension, Barbara offers a warm smile and encourages her niece to go ahead. Watching her aunt walk away, Aubrey thinks that asking is pointless because she knows she can never truly become a lady.
The scene shifts to the bustling street where a sign announces the store is now open.
A cheerful ding sounds as Trin leads Aubrey into a bakery, promising that the cookies there can cheer anyone up.
Trin asks the shopkeeper to recommend their tastiest cookies since her lady has been feeling down lately.
A quick whoosh sounds as the baker busily prepares trays, noting that their nut cookies are currently very popular. A soft step sounds as Aubrey wanders through the store, looking at the various breads and pastries on display.
Aubrey approaches the counter and quietly asks for the baker's attention.
To the shopkeeper's confusion, Aubrey asks about the specific details of the hiring process at the store. Aubrey clarifies that she is curious about how they find employees for such a lovely shop and what qualifications are needed. The woman explains that no special skills are required, as her own job is simply to display the items made by the professional baker. She adds that the role only involves simple cleaning and calculations, prompting Aubrey to realize she would need to be proficient in math. Trin interrupts the conversation to enthusiastically ask for Aubrey's opinion on a specific cookie.
Aubrey offers a soft smile and tells the girl that anything she chooses will surely be delicious.
Aubrey lets out a heavy sigh, reflecting on how her plan to study for independence has become an unreachable goal. She realizes she has no money to move out and refuses to return to a life of roaming the streets penniless, knowing no more miracles are coming. From across the shop, Aubrey thinks about finding a job she is capable of, but she wonders if her aunt would ever allow such a thing. A sharp ding sounds from the door as the weather outside turns into a sudden downpour. A soft drip sounds as the two women watch the rain, with Trin suggesting they should hurry back immediately. They quickly board the waiting carriage as the rain begins to drench the cobblestone streets. A rhythmic rattle sounds as the carriage moves, and Aubrey stares out the window with a distant, melancholy gaze. The carriage arrives back at the grand estate where people are seen scurrying through the rain toward the gate. Aubrey looks toward the mansion, contemplating a man who might hold the key to her continued survival.
Clutching her hat, she looks up with a look of quiet desperation, wondering if he is truly her only hope.
The scene transitions to the interior of the mansion where a decorative window latch is visible. On the day of the shipboard ball, Aubrey notes that the previous day's bath treatment and oils did wonders for her appearance. Trin gushes over how wonderful the new dress from the Countess looks while she carefully brushes Aubrey's hair. Aubrey considers that perhaps she should just get married as her aunt wants, thinking a loveless marriage might be acceptable. A sudden reach sounds as Trin places a hand on Aubrey's bare shoulder to offer her a wrap. Aubrey looks at her stunning reflection in the dark off-the-shoulder gown and asks the maid for her opinion.
Trin explains that she styled Aubrey's hair exactly like a fashion magazine and asks if she likes the result.
Looking into the mirror, Aubrey admits that it looks nice, but her expression remains troubled. A feeling of dread washes over her as she compares herself to a bride being dolled up only to be sold off to the highest bidder. Trin insists that she should wear the shawl, reminding her that it will be quite cold aboard the ship at night. When Aubrey hesitates, the maid speaks with unusual firmness, telling her that she really must put it on. Aubrey is taken aback by the intensity in Trin's voice and looks at her with a start. A quick glance sounds as the maid looks away nervously, stammering that it is only because the night air might be chilling. A sudden dun sounds as the realization hits that the maid saw the branding mark on Aubrey's back while helping her dress. Aubrey's eyes widen in shock as she realizes that Trin now knows the dark truth about her past. A thump sounds as Aubrey panics, realizing that the branding mark on her back has been exposed. A thump sounds as she desperately hopes she can convince the maid it was an accidental injury. A step sounds as Trin addresses her mistress while they stand in the room. A pant sounds as Trin pulls a shawl over Aubrey's bare shoulders, their eyes meeting in a moment of tension. Aubrey's face flushes with embarrassment as she claims there is nothing unusual for the maid to see.
A nod sounds as Aubrey lets out a few tears, acknowledging Trin's unspoken kindness.
Trin offers the emotional red-haired girl a warm and supportive hug. The scene transitions to the deck of a massive ship as the sun begins to set.
Barbara finds Aubrey standing alone on the deck and calls out to her. A drag sounds as her aunt leads her away to meet the host of the party.
Murfreo Hemberlot stands in the distance, laughing while he socializes with his guests.
Murfreo notices the arrival of the Countess and greets her with a sly smile.
He turns his attention toward the girl standing beside her, guessing her identity.
A grab sounds as Murfreo takes Aubrey's hand, mentioning he has heard much about her. A kiss sounds as the host bows over her hand in a formal greeting.
A shudder sounds as Aubrey nervously returns the greeting, while Murfreo notes how much she resembles the Countess. A laugh sounds as Barbara mentions that her sister was her twin, explaining why her niece inherited her looks.
A shrug sounds as Murfreo compliments Jeffrick on having such beautiful women in his home.
Murfreo waves a hand as he bids them a pleasant evening and hopes they enjoy the party.
A step sounds as the host walks away, leaving the group standing together.
Emily expresses her disgust for the man while her mother tries to quiet her.
A groan sounds as Aubrey clutches her shawl tightly, feeling unsettled by the encounter.
Aubrey's expression remains troubled as she stares into the distance. Jeffrick looks toward the girl and emphasizes the extreme importance of the night's events.
A grab sounds as Jeffrick pulls her closer, sternly commanding her to behave herself.
Aubrey looks away with a pained expression, feeling the pressure of her uncle's cold warning.
A giggle sounds as guests marvel at the host's ability to bring out such a large ship for a ball.
The guests discuss how the party hosted by Lord Hemberlot seems to grow larger every year.
Aubrey finds it strange as she observes the crowd around her with a look of concern.
She notes that there is an unusually high number of women present at the gathering.
A glance toward the crowd confirms that the majority of the guests are indeed women in elegant gowns.
Aubrey reflects on the fact that she has never been to a social event with so many women and so few men.
An announcement over the loudspeaker informs the guests that a welcome reception will soon begin in the royal hall.
Excited guests hurry along the deck, eager to secure prime seating for the upcoming reception. Aubrey decides to wait until the initial rush of the crowd subsides before heading inside herself.
She stands alone on the deck, her arms crossed as she stares out into the hazy distance. A crack sounds as the scene shifts to the wide open ocean under a darkening sky.
Aubrey thinks to herself, wondering how much longer it will be before they can head back home.
A flinch sounds as a voice from behind suddenly calls out her name.
Murfreo Hemberlot reappears and asks for her thoughts on the experience of being out at sea. A bow sounds as Aubrey politely thanks him for the invitation while begging for his understanding.
Murfreo expresses his interest in hearing the story of her 5 years at Count Levent's estate.
A turn sounds as Aubrey dismisses her past as unremarkable, crediting her current life to her aunt's kindness.
A grab sounds as Murfreo reaches out and touches Aubrey's chin with a chilling familiarity.
He leans in and suggests that even a deity would be captivated by her stunning features.
A dark and ominous feeling washes over Aubrey as she stares into the host's eyes.
A stomp sounds as she clenches her shawl, sickened by the way he continues to leer at her body.
Murfreo's expression turns cold and calculating as he watches the girl's reaction.
A man's voice interrupts the tension, noting the identity of the person standing with Aubrey.
Aubrey looks up in wide-eyed shock as the newcomer identifies her companion as Count Levent.
Aubrey is stunned to realize the man standing before her is none other than Colehard.
Murfreo greets the newcomer with a pleasantry, but the black-haired man irritably mentions that someone has recently angered him. Looking genuinely displeased, Colehard points out that the invitation he received was delivered in a most unconventional manner.
Aubrey watches the interaction with growing alarm, noting that she has never seen the man look so furious.
Colehard sharply interrupts Murfreo's attempts at social grace, suggesting that now is hardly the time for the host to be flirting with women. With a cold dismissal, the black-haired man tells Aubrey she is excused, leaving her to stammer out a quick agreement.
A quick dash sounds as Aubrey gathers her skirts and retreats from the tense confrontation on the deck.
A soft glance sounds as the red-haired girl looks back over her shoulder at the two men she just left behind.
Aubrey pauses at a distance, watching the broad back of the black-haired man as he continues his conversation. She stares intently, her mind racing as she considers the man who has suddenly reappeared in her life.
A realization dawns on Aubrey as she studies the intensity in his gaze from afar.
She envisions a scenario where he might be the one to finally rescue her from her dire circumstances. Aubrey quickly brushes the thought aside, fearing that she has lost her mind for even considering such a desperate hope.
A soft step sounds as Aubrey walks down the ship's corridor, her resolve hardening with every stride.
She admits to herself that despite the risks, she has never felt more certain about a course of action.
Aubrey concludes that her dreams of independence are impossible alone, but things might change if she partners with Colehard Carnus.
Clutching her shawl with trembling hands, the girl prepares herself for a difficult conversation.
Aubrey enters a private room and addresses Colehard, stating firmly that she needs to speak with him.
Colehard remains seated on the sofa, casually smoking a cigar while telling her to skip the formalities and get to the point. When Aubrey mentions she has a favor to ask, the man immediately shuts her down, refusing to even listen. Swallowing her pride, Aubrey offers a sincere apology for her past rudeness and careless behavior. A faint smile touches Coalheart's lips as he remarks that accepting a lady's apology is the only gentlemanly thing to do. He fixes her with an intense stare, addressing her by her surname and waiting for her next move.
A sharp clench sounds as Aubrey grips her garment, desperately begging the man for his assistance.
A sudden stop sounds as Coalheart's hand freezes when Aubrey asks for another chance to write the play for him.
Aubrey acknowledges how foolish she looks for returning after her initial refusal, but she stresses that she truly needs the employment.
She looks at him with pleading eyes, asking for just one more opportunity to prove her worth.
A cynical scoff sounds as Coalheart asks what benefit he would gain from such an arrangement, wondering if she is truly prepared to do whatever he wants.
A heavy plop sounds as the man drops his smoldering cigar into a glass of liquid, dismissing her promises as entirely worthless.
Coalheart bluntly informs her that he has no use for her and that a deal is impossible since he wants nothing in return.
Aubrey questions why his attitude has changed so drastically when he seemed interested in her before.
Looking at his back, the red-haired girl asks if the amusement he once found in her has truly vanished.
Without turning around, Coalheart coldly confirms that he is no longer entertained by her presence. He warns her to stop testing his patience and asks if she is genuinely unaware of her true purpose at the party.
A rustle sounds as Coalheart stands up and asks if she was truly coerced into coming here without understanding the host's intentions.
The man looms over Aubrey, asking if she really doesn't know the dark reputation of the man throwing the extravagant gala.
He mocks the spectacle of the cruise ship and the fireworks, explaining the sinister reality behind the host's displays of wealth.
Coalheart stares at her with piercing eyes, asking how much longer she plans to feign ignorance about her situation.
Aubrey is struck by a wave of shock and realization, her face paling as the gravity of his words sinks in.
A rhythmic step sounds as Coalheart decides he is finished with the conversation and begins to walk past the girl. A metallic turn sounds as the man's hand reaches for the doorknob, intent on leaving the room. He delivers a final one-word command for her to depart and leave him in peace.
A frantic grab sounds as Aubrey seizes his arm, her desperation reaching a breaking point as she tries to stop him.
She pleads for just a single chance, promising that she is willing to do absolutely anything he asks of her. Coalheart observes that her terror of becoming the host's next wife must be greater than her fear of him, a fact she grimly confirms. A sharp flinch sounds as Aubrey reminds him of his own words, pointing out that he once saw a reflection of himself in her.
She insists that he, more than anyone else, should understand the sheer depth of her current desperation.
A soft reach sounds as the red-haired girl touches him again, begging for the opportunity she so desperately needs.
Aubrey looks up at him with a face full of sorrow and hope, waiting for any sign of mercy from the black-haired man.
Back on the deck, the girl reflects on her bold move, knowing she has made her request and can now only wait for his decision. The red-haired girl waits alone.
Nicholas calls out to Aubrey excitedly.
Nicholas explains he initially missed seeing her despite spotting her aunt and uncle earlier.
He expresses relief that she has not forgotten him after their long separation.
Nicholas's hand extends as a soft reach sounds, offering her a chance to join him.
Aubrey politely declines his dance invitation, maintaining her distance from the social floor.
She claims her legs are aching as an excuse to avoid the dance. A sudden whoosh sounds as a blonde woman interrupts their private conversation. Rhythmic push sounds as Jessica forces Nicholas away to find other dance partners.
A light giggle sounds from Jessica as she watches the man depart.
A firm grab sounds as Jessica insists that Aubrey come along with her. She wonders where she is going.
A blonde woman in a red gown waits for Aubrey with a cold greeting.
A quick step sounds as Aubrey tries to excuse herself to find her hat.
A sudden grab sounds as the woman prevents Aubrey from leaving, mentioning they were discussing her.
Aubrey is visibly shaken as the woman recounts the tragic details of her childhood in Finsweed and Campshire. The woman continues detailing the harrowing survival story Aubrey thought she had kept hidden.
Aubrey is overwhelmed with shock, wondering how her personal trauma became public knowledge.
She looks toward Nicholas in suspicion, wondering if he is the source of the rumors. Nicholas reveals that his older brother shared her story, painting her as a brave adventurer.
Aubrey realizes her own the sick. Jessica notices Aubrey's distress while the woman in red dismisses her feelings as trivial.
The woman in the red gown insists that Aubrey is not one to dwell on her past. She leans in close, pressuring the red-haired girl to confirm her dismissive statement. The woman expresses a condescending pity, claiming she only feels sorry for Aubrey after hearing her past.
Aubrey struggles to maintain her composure while hiding her mounting panic and physical symptoms.
A desperate grab sounds as the woman attempts to remove Aubrey's protective shawl.
A sudden slide sounds as the garment is pulled away, nearly revealing the mark on her back.